me, Hans?
We are live today for Tesla's Q3 earnings, and I have with me James from Invest Answers. I have Emmett, and I have Nico. We'll also probably be seeing a little bit of Matt Smith and Yashu at some point today. We are without Farzad at this point in time. He may drop by briefly, but today is his anniversary, and so he is doing the all-important anniversary duties instead of joining us. But we've got some great knowledge in the house to help you all process the Tesla earnings today, whatever may be. And I'm excited for this. So, yeah, here, Emmett, since you just dropped in last, we'll put you on the spot first. What are your expectations for the shareholder letter that we're about to get?
Yeah. First, you can hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think there's very low expectations across the board. I think we're all kind of hungover from the We Robot event. I don't know about you, but normally I like black out Tesla earnings day on my calendar, and this is the first quarterly earnings I can remember where I forgot to do that just because I was just like so hungover from the We Robot event and trying to process all that information and digest it. And so I don't think there's really any expectation for earnings. I feel like most people think it's just going to be a nothing burger, and we just kind of move on. Hopefully, the next vehicle we get news about in Q1 next year, the Model Y refresh, we'll learn about more then, and so forth. So I kind of feel like there might be upside potential that no one's expecting if there is any kernels of unexpected good news coming out here. That's my feeling.
So do you have any little trades on for anything around earnings?
It's funny. I just put a tiny trade on just to buy some weekly call options. Sometimes it's really small. It's like 0.01% of my 0.1% of my portfolio. It's less. It's just tiny, just a couple of call options, just with some extra cash in my IRA account, just sitting there. So we'll see. It was just the weekly calls for, I think it was 2:30 or 2:35 strike. So Friday, just 2 days out. It was like $1 or something, I think, or $2 or something for the contract.
It's a nice little 10% move.
Yeah, we haven't had that nice move for a while. It feels like in earnings reports, and we'll see if this one will be one. But it's probably just money thrown away. But we'll see.
Awesome. Well, we'll go around the horn. Nico, how about you?
Yeah. So I just to echo what Emma was saying. It sounds like across the board in the Tesla community, everybody has just kind of forgotten or not been in a hurry to figure out what their numbers are for this quarter, whether it was Yashu or Larry or Herbert, obviously Emmett here. I just heard everybody say kind of the same thing, like, yeah, I haven't done my numbers yet, which I think is very interesting. I think it's part of kind of this paradigm shift into not really putting too much focus on each quarter earnings. Obviously, we need to be making some money to fund the future, but I think the more than 50% of the shift of mind space has moved into the future of robotics and autonomy now. So I think that's where the focus is. And I think that you'll see that echoed with the expert analyst questions. As far as trades, I very rarely do any kind of binary event. So I like to trade before or after the binary events. So I closed out a whole bunch of sold calls that printed really nicely today. So so now I have nothing but stock the way I like it. And I think it's going to be a nothing burger, other than I think we have more room to the upside and downside. So I think, and honestly, if you look at the expected move, it's really a lot less than what even We Robot was. And, even if you look at like Ivy rank, it's not that high compared to We Robot. We were at like 94, 96, something like that. So it's actually kind of come down a lot. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Then welcome, James. We have you here. Are you co-streaming this on your channel as well?
I am indeed.
So we
yes,
have
first ever.
Many of your viewers are joining us probably for the first time, and then for Farzad's viewers, This is James from Invest Answers. If you don't know him, super excited to have him with us today to digest earnings with. And yeah, so James, what are your expectations for today? And yeah, any trades that you have on?
It's funny. Emmett said the hangover from We Robot. I remember the day before Robot, it was like 5 minutes before close the market on 10:10. And I was going to buy a rake load of 250 put options that were expiring the next day. They would have cost me $9. And I was about to put that position. I said, you know what? I think it's going to be special. And I was wrong. So that would have been, $9 to $32, $35 very overnight pretty quickly. Anyway, that didn't happen. But I do have a slide to share here. One of the things that is interesting is it's the first time we have an earnings call where we're already beaten down pretty badly. And normally it takes the market about 2 weeks to digest the goodness from an earnings call or a huge event like We Robot. Now, the first thing I'd like to show is this, the earnings. You can see we've missed. It's very rare that Tesla misses 5 in a row. So that's first positive. Last quarter, we did have a beat on revenue, which was good. And then when we look at, let me see, I've got some retail analyst expectations and a couple of institutionals as well. The Wall Street's expecting 60 cents, but the retail analysts are all very pessimistic, which means when everybody expects the same thing, people can sometimes be wrong. And I think I have another slide as well regarding kind of what we can expect during the call. But that's where we are. The other thing that's kind of interesting is looking at the chart. We had a little bit of a pump into the close, which I wish didn't happen. I'd rather it sell off to the close and pump during the earnings call. So that is kind of how I am interpreting the very mixed signals out there. I'm wondering if anybody has anything to add to what I said, or am I off base?
I will add that Matt, who should be here at some point in the near future, his estimate is also 58 cents. So in line there with James Catt.
Yeah, James Catt's pretty good. And AJ as well. AJ is very bearish, which gives me pause. But at the same time as well, we have to consider the amount that they are investing right now in AI and all the new vehicles and ramping Cybertruck, Cortex. I mean, it is insane how much they are laying out. And that's what a lot of people, at least the Wall Streeters, kind of get confused. They just look at gross automotive margins and EPS because that's the most important thing, while ignoring all the other elephants in the room. So just my thoughts.
This is great info, James. Thanks for sharing those charts and this metric right here visually of the earnings estimates. Yeah, it's good to just put these numbers to paper here and look at it. And I think if there's any inkling of like maybe they give some info on full self-driving take rates increasing or something like that, that would be, I think, helpful, perhaps a helpful catalyst. Definitely, I'm going to look at the outlook section of the earnings report first. That's where I'm going to skip to right before I look at anything else, I think.
Exactly. And I also have a bingo card that we could talk about because the deck is coming out in about 10 minutes, I reckon, 11 minutes. But one of the other things that's kind of interesting to consider, wondering what you think. These are kind of the big issues for me, what I would be hoping to hear about on the guidance, not the results. But the most important thing in these calls is where the puck is going next. So Tesla Semi update, how are things going in Nevada, in Sparks, or whatever they're building that big gigafactory. The big thing that fell on deaf ears during the We Robot event was robotaxi. Unsupervised in Texas and California next year. And we had the Palo Alto news this week as well, which was huge. Cortex cooling is now operational, which is big, but nobody will ever pick up on that. Shout out to Joe Tegmeyer as well, who videoed that this morning. Model 2.5, that's the only thing that Wall Street cares about. When is the $25,000 car coming? And then Juniper, Model Y production is in production. It's been seen in the wild. Roadster, I think I've seen visions of that, but I don't know if it's AI created or not. And then Optimus, a lot of good stuff is happening behind the scenes. There was a lot of criticism that, it was teleoperated. But at the same time, a few days later, they launched the Optimus update, climbing stairs and navigating itself and thinking for itself, which is kind of powerful. Unsupervised FSD will be huge. I just did nearly 2,500 miles in 8 days in the Cybertruck. I was blown away. and it probably saved my life as well in one instance that I can say for a fact. I got to pump up that video as well of a deer running out in front of me in Yosemite. And then Megapack updates. Like by my math, in 2026, 2027, the Megapack business alone is worth $1 trillion. So that's the bingo card. Anything to add, or did I miss anything here?
Looks like you got a lot of stuff to me. I mean, I can't think. Oh, Nico, can you think of anything, or Hans?
Yeah, I mean the Cortex progress overall, in addition to cooling, I mean that's going to be huge. You know, I think a lot of people are wondering why is Cortex taking longer than the XAI Colossus cluster to get up and running. I don't think they appreciate how difficult video training is compared to just standard LLM training. So I don't think that concern is justified, but I'm looking forward to hearing guidance from them on getting Cortex fully up and running. And yeah, any commentary that they have around that it's huge. I mean, just thinking about the significance of what Cortex is and what it's going to be capable of, and you know the fact that, I mean, we've already seen how incredible it was for the XAI team to get Colossus up and running so quickly. And if they can basically outperform any other team with respect to bringing training online, that means the ROI on their AI investments are the fast, you know, XAIs will be the fastest in the industry in comparison to Microsoft or LLMs through Meta, and transferring that to Tesla and thinking about the implications of what Cortex is going to be capable of. Like, you know, because they don't even have anyone that's trying to train on video data at the same scale that Tesla is. And so for them to have that type of lead where no one else is even in the race, I really think this is the most important thing that 90% of even people who are interested in Tesla are just like sleeping on.
Yeah, and Hans, I think you should use your AI brain to take this one step further and explain to the audience how significant this is, especially for things like an FSD OEM deal, and talk a bit about the insurmountable moat that they have around data and now infrastructure as well. I think Wall Street missed that completely. I think retail investors don't understand the importance.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm curious to hear. I mean, I have a point of view on Cortex and how innovative and difficult that challenge is. But Nico's probably an even better person than I am to talk about, like, what is the difference in the architecture and the capabilities of Cortex compared to, you know, something like Colossus.
Yeah, I gotta be a little bit careful on what I say, given where I work. But I will say, you know, just kind of touch on that point. We're about to get the earnings out here in a second. I think a great point is brought up is everyone, you know, had lots of criticism about Optimus being somewhat human operated. To what degree, we don't know. Or even FSD, when people say it's not perfect, all these things. Yet the question is, okay, you can have your criticism and they're fair because what you're saying is not inaccurate. But my question is, okay, well then who's behind them? Who else is doing something different or better? And until you can see that, until you know who that is, till you can name someone, it's a pretty big deal that there is no one else out there. Whether it's on building out the cluster, I mean, even none of the hyperscalers are building out clusters the way XAI and Tesla are. With regards to data, you mentioned no one else is doing it, you know, remotely. Waymo has 700 vehicles to Tesla's millions. Tesla's the only one that actually.
Are we losing Nico?
Ooh, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yep,
You're
we
back.
can hear you now.
Oh, that's unfortunate for you guys. Anyways, as far as the list that you had up there, James, I really hope I'm leaning hard on the analyst today to ask probing questions about the launch in Texas and California. I would love for them to ask nuanced questions I think that Tesla will probably, or would be more likely to answer than not, such as when you said that, do you mean Austin, Palo Alto, Austin, San Fran, or do you mean the state? And when you say that, do you mean unsupervised as in nobody's in the driver's seat, or because there's 3 and Ys, S and X, they're still in the driver's seat, but they don't necessarily have to be involved for a certain period of time, right? Like those are like some really interesting, nuanced questions. And then something else that I would like to know is, we don't know when you guys are gonna hit the point where, hey, we can say victory, we got it, let's go robo taxis, right? We don't know. We don't know what we don't know yet. It's like Elon said many times, going up that hill, and at that mountain, then all of a sudden you realize, oh, there's another mountain, it's even higher to climb. But with that said, I'd be interested to know, what are the metrics, what are the KPIs that they have internally to determine at what point does the risk reward scale tip in favor of, okay, it's time to actually do this, right? Because there's a point there where it's almost unconscionable at a certain point not to put this out, because it might get into an accident every 1 in 10 million miles, 15 million miles, versus not having it out there. And I mean, that's a hard one, right? To really put your thumb on, because people are less empathetic about a car versus a human. But math is math, and if you can reduce the total deaths out there, I mean, I literally just saw a horrible accident just the other day, and it's hard to see these things and not think about FSD immediately. But those are the things I'm interested in.
You're dead right. And one of the things a lot of people throw FUD at Tesla is like, they're never going to approve it. But you have to realize right now we're living in this very AI-driven, disruption-oriented world, and cities that want to brace innovation for their own rep sheet will allow this to happen. That's why Palo Alto, I think, is making the first move. And Elon could do whatever he wants in Texas. The roads there are a lot simpler to drive on than a place like San Francisco and Los Angeles and Boston, for example. So yeah, it's a very good point there. But I think it's going to roll out. And I think they are 99% the way there with unsupervised. And we haven't even seen version 13 yet. So I think they have a lot of things up their sleeve. And the AI team has executed flawlessly so far in the month of September, or was it October? September. The months are going by so fast. Anyway, just bonkers. But this is kind of like my second list of the investor questions I would like to see asked and drilled into as well. And some of them you're probably very familiar with, and some of them you guys touched on.
I can tell you number 3 is not happening.
Oh, something came out. It's printing. It's moving around. We don't see it yet. It's on the Dow Jones Newswire, but the stock's moving up fast.
There you go. By the way, never before has Tesla stock fallen 5 days in a row going into an earnings report. So maybe, but sometimes
maybe this is stick. Sometimes it reverses. Yeah, sometimes it starts out high and reverses. But we'll see. It's right now in the 220s.
226. Yeah, we're pumping.
We probably have to hit F5 for another 5 minutes before we can see it.
F5. I don't have an F5 in a Mac.
Or whatever. F2. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, that's good news,
Wall
everybody.
Street's got it, and their algos are acting on it already. So
now I'm very glad I didn't buy those puts today. I was looking at the puts for Friday, and they were the 215s were $10. So you'd need 205 to break even almost. So
well, you never know. I mean, even in the We Robot event, the stock was up to like 255 in the beginning, and then by the end it went down. But so it might start out high and then come back down. It's hard to say. We'll see. Yeah,
I can share a real-time chart actually on the 1 second.
Go. Tesla 3Q gross margins 19.8%, estimate 16.8. Adjusted earnings per share 72 cents, estimate 60 cents. Rev 25.18 billion, estimate was 25.43 billion. So they missed on revenue, but they beat on EPS and margins.
Wow.
More efficient than the street thinks or thought.
So Wall Street got the gam, but my take on that is I think Cybertruck was a big tailwind for gross automotive margins. Maybe they were able to scale it and get that price, the cost down, because they're slinging so many of them for 106, 105K on average between the Cyber Beast and the dual motor.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Pull up. You guys able to pull up the deck yet or not yet?
Yeah, I've got the deck open.
Oh, all right, I might pull it up too.
All right, well, share away because I don't have it.
So one of the things they note, the first thing I was looking at was whether regulatory credits came in pretty high, but they were in the $700 million range, which was higher than average, but not crazy high, lower than where it was last quarter. But it looks like there was a decent amount of recognition of FSD revenue related to Cybertruck and actually Smart Summon. So I'm trying to figure out exactly how much that is because they didn't exactly detail it. So I'm wondering if in the just difference in the balance sheet quarter over quarter, we might be able to hone in on that deferred revenue piece. So it was, it's actually pretty consistent. So I'm not sure what the rationale is here.
So Matt, you hit on something. Hey there, by the way, you hit on something.
Yeah, I just jumped right in right when they dropped it. I thought they drop it at 415 or 420 or something.
Nico took his cap off or something. I thought for a second. No, but you mentioned they break out the Cybertruck FSD revenue and not anything else. That's fascinating.
Oh, no, they didn't break out the Cybertruck FSD revenue. They said that there was recognition of FSD related to the Cybertruck. So all of the Founders Edition Cybertrucks came with FSD. There wasn't an option not to have it. I believe they delivered that functionality right at quarter end. So they were able to recognize FSD for a decent amount of those vehicles for those Cybertrucks. And then for across the fleet, at least in the United States, for actually Smart Summon.
Cool.
So trying to figure out exactly how much that was, but they don't say it right there in the summary.
Stock hit 227. I mean, the big news here is gross margin 19.8%. That was the bane of Wall Street's existence for the longest time. And I was right. We never saw 5 earnings misses in a row. So that history didn't repeat, which is good. We got a beat there.
Yeah, Cybertruck hit positive gross margins.
Wow.
It looks like
after 3 quarters.
In the outlook section, they're reaffirming a more affordable model on start for production first half of 2025. So that's good. It seems, completely separate from the robotaxi product.
There we go.
Appears.
Good Lord. 230. Whew. Moving up.
So looks like Emmett's gonna do okay on his little
miniature bet.
call options.
Maybe.
I
don't know. I mean, it's got to get past 235 to be in the money. But I could probably sell it at the open tomorrow for a nice 3x gain or something.
Yeah, it's screaming past 230 now. I think we could see 240, 250 tomorrow if this continues. But again, it depends on the guidance. And with these types of positive fundamental numbers, with all the investments that they're making, they can be much more confident in their guidance going forward, especially around Model 2.5 and all that stuff. So a lot of goodness here. Did somebody check in on the Tesla bears, see if they're okay? Tesla hack. Okay. What do you have highlighted there?
Yeah, I love this statement. These vehicles will utilize aspects of the next generation platform as well as aspects of our current platforms and will be able to be produced on the same manufacturing lines as our current vehicle lineup. And this is pretty much exactly in line, I think, with my expectations, but also just it makes common sense that if we're going to produce the Cybercab in large volumes, we'll say somewhere in the 5 to 10 million vehicles per year range. Well, you've got a long, even if we exit 2025 with 3 million units of capacity, growing that to then 3 million plus 5 million a year of Cybercabs, that's a huge jump. And so we definitely need whatever those next generation vehicles are to help expand the capacity of the supply chain and the manufacturing base. And whatever that vehicle is, it needs to be something that is halfway in between the Cybercab and current 3 and Y in order to help make that a continuous ramp that is something that can be accomplished feasibly.
So I've got some breaking news, if you guys don't mind me jumping in. Energy gross margins for the quarter, 30.5%.
Yikes.
Wow.
That is wild.
Wow.
That is a big shock.
Well, before you joined, Matt, I said, based on 2026 numbers that I forecast, the energy business alone should have a market cap of $1 trillion. That's how important this business is. And nobody's appraising it.
I would probably disagree with that. Just but I'd be curious on how you kind of get to those numbers on a rule of like what's the high level you're looking at.
Yeah, just the growth rates. It also assumes the build out of a third megafactory after Shanghai, and 12 gigawatt hours per facility, and a constant 25% profit margin, and just crazy growth. I mean, energy is needed. They will not have any problem selling these things through 2030, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I agree. I mean, I think the TAM is very large. But every time I've done the math though and tried to kind of back in on this, I'm getting, you know, like maybe $50 to $100 of earnings per share, not earnings per share, that'd be awesome. Of like
Share
value
price.
to share price implication. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
like I think it's important and underrated, but I would struggle to get to the $1 trillion mark, at least on a present value basis. If you're going to project out a number of years and say at a future value it could get to $1 trillion, like I'd buy that.
Yep.
So are there any pages y'all want me to go double click on and dig into, or?
I did a search for the update on the 4680 cell, and there was just like one update in battery powertrain manufacturing. The last sentence is Q3. We produced our 100 millionth 4680 cell and continue to progress our dry cathode manufacturing lines. So I don't remember where they were previous to what their last like metric was for how many 4680 cells they produced, but at least they're quoting, you know, maybe someone will do the math and see kind of what their rate of improvement is, I guess, on the 4680, because I know that's a big part of their future still, right?
Yeah, I remember they actually tweeted out about that 100 millionth cell, and I think Jordan had a good thread
Okay.
on what the implications of that were for growth, and basically that, yeah, we are finally getting into a new phase of exponential growth for the 4680 again. When you compare that, like you said, with the dry cathode thing being solved, then it looks like, you know, maybe we're finally out of the woods of all the choppiness for 4680 growth. All right. So any other highlights we want to dig into?
I'm trying to read as I go.
Yeah, I mean, just one note on page 8, I think is pretty interesting. They're talking about their AI software and hardware, and at the end of that, they say they expect to have 50,000 H100s capacity at the Gigafactory Texas by the end of October, which that's a little bit ahead of my internal timeline. I wonder if that's actually usable capacity already. I wasn't thinking they'd have that much on like so quickly. So if that's true, that seems like that'd be a pretty you know, good news for the development of FSD. But I'm a bit surprised they don't seem to say anything about like V13, which was expected to drop in the end of October. As far as I can tell, they haven't mentioned that in here.
Yeah, I don't see any mention of that specifically. I do. Yeah, James had pointed out that Joe Tegmeyer this morning called out the fact that they've got the liquid cooling running for the Cortex cluster, and so I'm sure that's probably in preparation to get. I mean, that's looks like 21,000 H100s up and running, above and beyond what they already have.
There's a picture of the cooling as well in the deck. You want to flash it for a second? Only 2 of the fans are running though, so 1/3. I think they're still testing it.
So there's two interesting things that I just saw. I don't know if you guys already talked about it or not, but it looks like they are anticipating a really big Q4 because they think there'll be slight growth year over year.
Wow.
So
Yeah, Elon's going to pull out all the stops to make sure they do not shrink, even if it means 0% on all vehicles, FSD transfer, etc. I expect that to happen, and they have the capacity. And the numbers just out of Shanghai this morning were very strong. Third best week
Yeah,
ever, and Model 3 is a third of all volume.
Yeah, under Outlook, it says we expect to achieve slight growth in vehicle deliveries in 2024. So what is, you guys keep me honest, what's that mean? They have to hit 500,000?
It's over. I think it'd
Over
be
520.
520. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That'd be huge.
And they've never hit 500 before. So I mean that's that's a lot
And
of
then-
vehicles.
And then for all those people talking about Tesla needs to do a capital raise, it sounds like they're signaling that
Who's
they
saying
don't need
that?
to do a capital
Who's
raise.
saying that? Whoever says that,
They've got 33.6 billion in cash. And
That's
I was just
ridiculous.
looking at this. Free cash flow in Q3 was 2.7 billion. I mean, that's wild.
Yeah.
I'm
Do
not
we have-
going to throw anybody under the bus, but they're on the other big stream happening right now.
Oh. Oh my gosh.
And they's not one person, it's several people.
I actually haven't heard that in a while. I mean, that's kind of shocking to me that people are still saying Tesla needs to raise cash. I mean, I thought we dispensed with that like 5 years ago.
Yeah, me too.
Even me, Kevin, says that like every other time he talks about Tesla.
That's ridiculous.
I know you guys probably like it's ridiculous. You guys listen to him.
Have we dug into why the revenue was a miss? Was that because of revenue recognition around megapacks?
No, I mean, I think the megapack revenues were largely in line, or the energy revenues, at least with what I had been modeling. I'm not comparing it to where the street came in, but I mean, I think the automotive sales numbers are lower than I would have expected. So 18.8 billion versus 18.5 billion in Q2, and that's despite having delivered a lot more vehicles. I'm guessing product mix. I mean, we know they sold a lot more in China at a much lower price point, so I'm guessing that has something to do with it. And I wonder if foreign exchange. I should probably look at this before I start spouting off, but I would imagine if the yen depreciated a little bit, that might decrease the sales figure a little bit on a, when you adjust it for the dollar impact. But the margin would be intact still. So that's a thought.
And another interesting call out too, apart from the Tesla gross margin of 19.8%, which is mind blowing, despite the rev miss. Can you imagine? But the other thing is Tesla free cash flow 2.74 versus 1.6 estimate. And free cash flow is everything. That's probably the most important metric, as Jeff Bezos used to say over 20 years ago. So any thoughts on that? Especially with all the investments that they're making at the same time.
Yeah, they invested 3.5 billion in capex this quarter, and they were still able to generate that much in cash flow.
Nearly 3 in free cash flow.
Wow.
Madness. How much are the emission credits? Can't see those numbers.
700 something million, I think.
So it's small. Okay.
739 million. So I mean, higher than it has been historically, but lower sequentially.
Yeah, usually it's like 500 million or something in that neighborhood, right, Matt?
That's where it had been for a long time. Last quarter, it spiked up to 890, and so like, okay, is that an anomaly or is that a sign of things to come? So I am surprised it's as high as it is again, but it's not like it's completely out of whack and driving 100% of the change. It seems like there's a lot of little things that are all kind of piling up for a really strong quarter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Gordon Johnson is delighted with the results.
I mean, their operating expenses are super lean. This is, I mean, they're 2.28 billion after all their restructuring is done now. And I was kind of expecting they'd come somewhere in the like $2.5 billion range, maybe a little bit under that. So that they really, all that cost cutting they did is like, that's a meaningful impact there.
Because this is the first quarter as well that they had the full impact of the RIF, correct?
Yep, that's right. And they still do have
the lowest in 5 quarters.
Madness. Check the chart. It's kind of struggling around the 232 mark. and it falls off again. But now it's 229. Now it's all about waiting for the guidance in 10 minutes.
Yep. Marines call. I wonder how many say questions they'll get to.
I think they'll get to a bunch because a lot of them they're going to be like, "This is not the place for product announcements."
Yeah. Do you think Elon's going to maybe not be on this call, given how active he is politically right now? Do you think he'll let his
No, his stump speeches are just an hour or so. I'm sure he's scheduled around it. I think, considering how good the results are, I think he'll definitely be on.
Do you think he starts off the call by talking about how important it is that we elect President Trump?
every vote counts? Yeah.
Every vote counts. I want to encourage all the analysts on Wall Street, go and register.
Yeah. All the swing states, chance to win the $1 million, sign the petition.
That's an interesting topic. I get a lot of questions, by the way. I just want to field it to you all. What happens if
When
Elon's guy does not win? How badly could
never
that
mind.
impact the Tesla stock? Any takers?
What's gonna happen, my friend?
I worry about Elon, just himself personally, if somehow Trump does not win. But I'm not sure the stock takes a near-term hit. I'm not sure, but I think Elon personally, the key man risk seems to go up just for his sanity. I feel like.
I think it's a nothing burger. Look, even if Kamala would win, which I really don't think is going to happen, I think you already see like someone like Mark Cuban out there who's speaking on her behalf, like already trying to like work to say. I mean, even he's saying like if Trump won, like yeah, of course I would help out the country and all that. And honestly, if Kamala wins, I'm sure Elon the same way would be like, if you want me to come in and start up the Doge for us, I'll do that.
They do a Mark Cuban yesterday.
Well, I don't think it's
Mark
joining
Cuban.
Mark Cuban. Honestly, I think Mark Cuban gets too much shit for that. Like, I don't agree with a lot that he says, but he's not wrong. I mean, you even hear Jamie Dimon saying, like, I don't care who the president is. It's about America first. And so whoever's in there, that is your commander in chief. That is your leader, whether you like them or not. And you should do what's best for the country at that point, because we got 4 years of that. So one way or another, I mean, it's there's too much vitriol on this. Like, it's not my person, so that's it. I hate them, and that's it. Like, that's not going to help us.
I mean,
So
I would love to see the
Sawyer-
Department of Government Efficiency either way. I think that
Exactly.
would be less likely to actually happen under Kamala, but man, I would welcome it if we ended up there.
But can you imagine the millions of grifters and how upset they would be if Doge happened? Going back to Emmett's point of the risk for Elon,
Mhm.
you go in anywhere with a chainsaw. Was it La Fuera, the guy, Javier, down in Argentina? He's getting away with it. He's surviving somehow, but I don't know what his security detail is like. But a lot of people on the grift, they don't want to lose their grift. Lifelong politicians and stuff like that. So I'd be very concerned.
Elon did say in one of his Q&As that, anyone would get like a very generous severance package of like 2 years, so that they could have plenty of time to find another job somewhere,
Yeah,
but
good luck.
I'm not sure that'll get out to everyone.
Yeah, lifelong politician trying to get a job in the real world, not going to happen.
Yeah.
Who's going to hire those? So
Yeah.
well,
But
maybe
Sawyer just tweeted that he did the math, I guess, but it seems to signal over 515,000 deliveries in Q4.
there you go. We're close
to meet that metric that's referenced. So that would be a big Q4. Yeah.
By the way, has anybody seen a slight shift in mainstream media? Instead of slaying Tesla and Elon and SpaceX every day, it's actually become more positive lately, or is it just me?
I actually said that on either with Herbert, Randy, or with Farzad and Hans. I forget. But on one of them, I said that I think when they succeeded with the Starship catch, that was the shift in the Overton window for Elon. I think starting from that point moving forward, you're going to see people come back onto the Elon Musk good camp.
232. I think that there's a lot more attacks focused on Elon as a person lately, with his political involvement, and it's shifted away from the companies as much,
Yeah, but to me, that's more about, like, that's a problem. If someone can't have their own opinion without you saying that there's something wrong with this person, or they're corrupt, or they're unstable, and like, that's you have a problem with yourself. Like, you can have a difference of opinions, right? Like,
Yeah.
you see Matt and Farzad, and they still don't respect each other.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Nico.
Just a shout out to the fact that Farzad's not on here to bring the stream down. This is really nice.
Maybe we should have Farzad not on more often so the stock reacts this way.
I know,
Market
right?
likes no Farzad.
Yeah.
Hans, you can take over, I think.
Yeah. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Cindy.
Can we double tap as well? Was it Matt that you mentioned the Cybertruck is now contributing to margin? I think that is worth repeating. I mean, what other car company can make something so groundbreaking, so revolutionary, with such complex technology, materials, and make it profitable in a short window of time? It's unthinkable.
Lucid.
Rivian. Oh shoot, no.
Come on, right one. I like, imagine being one of the other incumbents. It'd make you pretty anxious right now, I'd say.
I mean, I can't imagine being GM or Ford and looking at the Cybertruck and realizing that this is what you have to look forward to competing against for the next couple decades.
Yeah, they're 1/3 into the ramp, and they're already profitable. Mind blowing.
It does bear noting though that, I mean, they're selling, at least in Q3, exclusively Foundation Series Cybertrucks at a. What do you think the ASP on those was? Like 105, 110?
Yeah, 105, 100. Yeah.
So, I mean, if they're positive, I mean, they could be positive by $2,000-$3,000, and that's like a 2 or 3% gross margin. So now that they're introducing the lower cost variation, those margins, I would assume, might shrink, but that's going to be offset by the fact that they're continuing to work out kinks in their production system and scale and get the the economies of scale that's going to help. So it's going to be a little bit of a cat and mouse game with ASPs coming down on Cybertruck. You're not going to get this one-time benefit of the recognition of all the Cybertruck revenue for both Q2 and Q3, which is what they got, because all the Cybertrucks sold in Q2, the FSD revenue was recognized in Q3 also. So that's a little bit of a one-time bump, pretty small impact, I think, overall, but it's, there were a couple things that are one-time-ish with Cybertruck in Q3. So I would be curious if they talk at all about like what was the actual gross margin on Cybertruck, or like, are they still going to be gross margin positive at these new lower price ASPs that they're going to have going forward?
Hans, can you pop my chart up for a second? I'm sharing right now. Check this out, ladies and gentlemen. Pretty bonkers. We are shooting to the moon. I said it could be 240 to 250 tomorrow. It looks like we might hit 240 on this call. That's coming. But that's a big move out there. And that means there's some gamma squeezing going on too, because a lot of bears are very much short. And they were used to the last 4 quarters of going down.
Can we just say what a shock these numbers were, though? I mean, like, every single, Twitter analyst, expert, myself included, was coming up with EPS figures lower than Wall Street. And Tesla absolutely knocked the socks off of every single estimate. I mean, this is like across the board. This is a massive beat.
Matt, if they only had regulatory credits of 300 million instead of, what is it, 800 million or whatever, if they had 500 million less regulatory credits, how much would that have affected the earnings per share? How many pennies?
It's a handful. I can get you. Let me
just like a rough estimate.
I closed
5 cents, 20 cents, 10 cents.
No, it's not 20 cents. It'd be between 5 and 10, I suspect.
Okay, all right. So it's it's hard.
Irrelevant.
I feel like that provides a lot of noise, and that number alone, for example, like it's almost meaningless for the long. In a lot, we like to discount that, but it's real money. But it's a lot of noise in that variation, I feel like.
I don't know, with everybody pulling back on their EV plans, I think that regulatory credit revenue stream is only going to continue to grow for the foreseeable future.
You might be right. Yeah. Could be
more. GM was actually growing pretty significantly year over year. And I think quarter over quarter, they were up like 30% or something like that. So it's they've been gaining market share now in Europe, probably less so. But I don't know. It's not clear to me that reg credits will be going up based on the success that some of the other OEMs are having.
But to put it in the context, that regulatory credit that everybody always wants to say it's, we need to factor it out. That's over 50,000 H100s a quarter that they can buy. Think about it that way, right? That's over. That's probably closer to almost 100,000 H100s per quarter they could be buying. Like, they're essentially all the other incumbents are paying for Tesla to get the AI compute hardware so that they can then further take the lead on them. I mean, the irony is palpable.
So, Emmett, I did just run the math just to finish that. With the reg credits, the 790 versus if they had been at 450 million, which is kind of where they had been historically, that's worth 7 cents.
Okay, that's not much.
Wow.
Not too much.
That's nothing. Let's go.
I mean, it definitely contributes to the beat. I mean, there's like it's not actually nothing, but it's like you still the core business still did, what was it, another 7 cents on top of that? What was the actual earnings per share?
I was gonna say, you factor that out, it's still a beat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Farzad, you're gone.
To circle back though to the capex point, we really were using that money to build out auto manufacturing capacity for a long time, but I think to your point, Nico, like we have shifted to now using that capex really to invest in training capacity and building out the AI factories that will produce the intelligence that animates our robotaxis and our Optimus robots.
Yeah, another very nuanced finding as well. People were all up in arms about them stopping the supercharger rollout, but they created more superchargers last quarter than the previous quarter. So they have not slowed down. In fact, they've accelerated. Just a small little point.
Good point.
Roadster, is it going to happen? Quick round the table, yes or no? I think it is. Next year, and will you order one?
I got my reservation in already, so I'm just waiting. Yeah.
Wow, I'd probably kill myself, so I'm not gonna. I'm happy with the Cybertruck. I need something bulletproof.
I think they might only produce a certain amount of them, I guess. I don't know. I feel like it's just gonna be like a spectacle, like a technology spectacle or something, and it'll make like several thousand of them, and that's it. So it could be like a real cool collector's item for the future if that's the case. But maybe they'll just make as many as people want. Who knows?
There was another thing as well that people may have missed, but a lot of people were saying that the conductive charging would be a failure and would result in a lot of loss of energy. But apparently it's running at 95% efficiency. Do you guys see that? That's also a big point.
Yeah, I definitely saw that MKBHD put his foot in his mouth on that one. And obviously, yeah, Wi-Furion is above 90. So it's hard to say. I mean, I didn't see the estimate that it was actually at 95%, but I knew it was somewhere in that vicinity.
Yeah,
I think it's between like 90 to 95%. I'm an investor in this company, Hevo Power. That's been doing it for a long time too, and they're working with some of the OEMs on this for future models, and I think it's between 90 and 95%. Maybe it was 80-85% 5 years ago or something, but it's gotten a lot better in recent years. So.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
but it can only be up to a
ahead.
certain capacity. Like if they try to, pass through as much energy as a supercharger, even at 93% or something, there's too much heat escaping to make it work because it would melt everything around it. So it can only be up to a certain level of energy capacity, power at a time. I can't remember. Matt knows the kilowatt hours or kilowatts. I forget the metrics. I confuse them, but it's
kilowatts probably for the charge rate. Yeah. Which
amps or whatever. Yeah.
That does seem like questionable to me. I mean, because Tesla clearly has thought about this before they decided that the Cybercab's just not going to have a charge port. So they must have figured out how to charge them at a high output supercharger type of situation. I mean, do you guys have any thoughts on are they going to just update the supercharger infrastructure with some mats or something, or are they just going to assume that people only charge these at home? Or it seems confusing to me.
I think there's going to be two things. One, I think you'll have dedicated Cybercab charging lots, and then I think when you buy Cybercab, you'll also get the opportunity to buy a wireless charging station, just like you have the ability to buy a wall charger.
Yeah.
Did they say the Cybercab is not going to have a plug for superchargers? Did they
Nope,
explicitly say
doesn't.
that?
Yep, doesn't have it.
They didn't say that.
But it wasn't visible on the vehicle.
But
There's
that's
no
okay.
sign of
Well,
a plug.
lots of things weren't visible on the vehicle. Doesn't mean that's not there.
No, they're going to make this minimalist in every single way. When you sit inside it, it's just whatever you could rip out, they ripped out, except for the chairs and the screen. That's it.
Well,
That's
I
all
wonder
that's
how
in
much
there.
cost it would reduce to eliminate that charging capability if they, if they wanted to.
I'd say
It might save
$300
$500 or so.
300 to 500 vehicle, I'd say, at scale.
I think that's going to be a game time decision that they're going to continue to explore from now all the way up until they start up production. And I think it's a 50-50 chance you may see production launch with or without the supercharger plugs.
I think if they're doing a global rollout, they would need to have both. But because it's going to be in select places, maybe China, Texas, California, they'll have it in cities that will have the infra built out before they actually launch. And they've got a year to do that. And that's probably one of the reasons why it's going to take a year before we see these things in the wild. The charging infra.
And I think you could, to Nico's point, you can do pretty high capacity charging infrastructure in a parking lot where you just have basically FIFO lanes where there's just a whole line of these wireless chargers that they move over. And so you could fill it up, an entire parking lot to where there's an entry on one side and an exit on the other side. And the entire parking lot is essentially just nothing but these wireless charging pads. And you can move quite a few Cybercabs through something like that and charge a lot of vehicles in a relatively, short period of time.
Yes, indeed.
So
It's
did anybody
definitely
find
cheaper
any
to-
Easter eggs? Sorry, go ahead. What's cheaper?
I was going to say it's definitely cheaper to, I think, build out a bunch of charging pads than to put up a bunch of superchargers.
For sure.
I don't see any Easter eggs yet, but there, could be somewhere.
There's
in the
normally
pictures.
something. Yeah.
I'm looking at pictures.
I still can't believe I missed the event. Freaking hurricane.
Oh, you were stuck in the storm?
Yeah.
Or had to? Oh,
That's
sorry
a
about
bummer.
that. Hope everything's okay now.
Well, our house is gutted.
Oh, crap.
My wife gets her dreams. We're finally, after only being in the house for 6 months, we get to redo the kitchen again.
Can you even find people to do the work right now? Wouldn't they all be slammed?
I got people.
I didn't
Hey,
see
the-
enough people with the Wii robot event. Like they have a picture of the hand, and I think that's a real big deal. Like the new hand is 22 degrees of freedom. I looked up the human hand only has 24 degrees of freedom, so it's just a little bit more nimble than this new robot hand. So I feel like solving the Optimus hand is a really big deal. So that's a big. They have a picture dedicated just to the robot hand, for example. I think they know it's a big deal.
There's two very important things that I witnessed while I was there. One is holding up this little paper bag of caramels or chocolates or something, but the top of the bag was extremely thin, maybe 2 or 3 millimeters, and it had the dexterity to be able to grab the top of that bag and hand it over. So that was, it speaks to exactly what you're saying, Emmett. Extremely dexterous fingertips.
And that was Optimus that you saw there. They have the hand
Better
by
one.
itself on the new one. They haven't put on the Optimus yet. I don't think that has 20. That's even more crazy. So that's
There was a guy there called Dr. Know-It-All, and
Yeah.
he said he saw 22 degrees of freedom on the demo one at the event.
oh really?
Can anybody
On the
correct me on
Optimus
that? Hans, did you pick up
Yeah.
on that?
We're conflating.
Yeah,
two
here,
things.
I'll show you. Let me pull up the shirt. Ta-dun, ta-dun.
Who would have ever thought we'd spend so much time fascinated about fingers?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Oh, it's
So
in the
this was the 22 degree of freedom hand. They did have it. It was at the event. It was in the VIP section. There's some videos of it circulating around online. Dirty Tesla has one that's probably the best one that I've seen, but there's a few other ones as well. So this is the new hand, but this hand was not what was actually on most of the robots that were out in the wild. So these
any.
hands, yeah, this is
not
the
most,
Optimus.
on any.
Yeah, this is Optimus Gen 2, and that's the Optimus Gen 2 hand on all of those robots that y'all interacted with, and that is the 11 degree of freedom hand, as opposed to this very special hand that you can see is driven by these tendons. It's a whole redesign of how the hand works. So, like you can see, there's 3 individual segments here on each finger, 3 for the thumb as well. These Optimus Gen 2 hands only have 2, so basically 1 2 knuckles instead of 3 for each, and that's also for the thumb and for the fingers. And so anyways, there's a lot of differences between this design, and this one is the one that will be able to function almost identically to a human hand if they can figure out the software problem. And that is a very, 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 very difficult, if bipedal walking is hard, human dexterity hands is even harder.
I'm glad I'm not in that job. Trying to figure that out.
I've done a little bit more. I've done a little bit more math in the background here, and came up with something I think is pretty interesting. So they note on their energy deployments outlook that energy deployments are going to more than double in 2024. And so if you look at what they did in 2023, combined.
What page, Matt? I'll pull that back up.
It is page 10. It's the last sentence of the first paragraph. It says energy storage deployments are expected to more than double year over year in 2024. Okay. So if you look at what they did in 2024 on stationary storage deployments, it was 14.7 gigawatt hours. And so a double of that would be 29.4 gigawatt hours. And to just do a double, that would imply Q4 deployments of over 9 gigawatt hours, which is basically what they did in Q2. But since they're saying more than double, I mean, it could be 10, 11, maybe even higher. But at a minimum, we should be expecting 9 gigawatt hours of deployments in Q4. So I think that's pretty impressive guidance that they're giving there.
Good find, Matt. Good deduction.
Especially if we can maintain 30% gross margins, then I don't know. Maybe it is worth $1 trillion.
Yeah, you should put that out on a tweet like Sawyer. Just so.
Yeah, I think I'll do that.
That's a good. It seems like very logical deduction right there. A lot of people probably haven't put it together.
Would you guys say that we can officially say that Tesla gross auto margins, excluding regulatory credits, have officially bottomed, since now we're at 17.1 versus 14 point something last quarter?
Well, I think they're going to cut a lot of prices this quarter to ship, 500,000+ cars. I wonder if it could get lower for this fourth quarter, if they're going to really try to ship more product by having to cut prices more. I'm not sure. It's got to be close to the bottom if it hasn't bottomed. But this fourth quarter, it depends how many deals they're gonna give out. I guess that's my thought.
Man, I just wonder how many people are trying to cover right now.
There's definitely some of that going on. And the question is, can they?
That goes to show you, when everybody thinks something, that's probably wrong.
Matt, you missed the beginning of the video today because we spoke about that. It was highly unlikely there'd be 5 misses in a row, and everything was shaping up. The sell-off post-We Robot, but it was leading to definitely some type of bounce. However, none of us expected the results to be this good.
Yeah, so I did kind of think the same thing, that sentiment seemed a little too bearish to me, based on everything I was seeing. Like, so many people are just like, oh, it'll be another 5% sell off for sure. And I'm like, okay, when even the bulls have that sentiment, that's that's a good kind of contra signal to maybe what you should be thinking. But to your point, I definitely did not expect a pretty massive beat across like all the fundamentals like we saw here. So this is. There's a lot of fuel being poured on the fire here. It's pretty cool to see.
The EPS beat is 21.5%, and the revenue miss is 1%. So we'll excuse them on the revenue miss.
Yeah, I'd love for them to dig into FSD in a little bit more detail, because from what they provided, you really don't have a whole lot of information on how much they recognize from the deferred revenue balance, let alone like what are the FSD subscriptions right now, or what's the take rate. I've always been like wanting them to disclose a little bit more around that, and it's just, given that revenues are flat and margins were such a surprise, it seems that we've got FSD revenues really contributing to that. I mean, I don't think the reason that gross margin expanded so much is that they cut out a huge amount of cost from the vehicles. I'm sure there's been a bit of that kind of helping around the edges, but to me, it's almost smelling more like, FSD sales or subscriptions or, one-time recognition is a lot higher than we were expecting. But when I'm looking at the deferred revenue balance from, what they can disclose, which is just their deferred revenue on the balance sheet is all lumped together with all the different sources of deferred revenue. Might need to wait for the 10Q to come out to get more detail on how much of that is related to FSD. But there's nothing jumping out as like the entire deferred revenue balance decreasing in any noticeable way.
So can you pop up that chart again, my one that I'm sharing, just to show you how quickly this thing is moving? Not the slide, but the actual screen. Yeah, it looks like it's topping off a bit here at the 232 level, 234, but still big move. And people have to remember, not all people have access to after-hours markets. So it does bode well. Well, depending on the guidance we get later, which I think will be uber bullish, but tomorrow should be a very good day. And that's where you see the big gamma squeeze happening.
One other thing I want to just say on the deferred revenue side, if there was some huge recognition of deferred revenue that was like a one-time item that was really driving these margins, you'd expect the deferred revenue balance to actually go down. But what we're seeing on the balance sheet on slide 27, I don't know if you want to pull it up or not, Hans. It's just a bunch of numbers, but the deferred revenue balance actually increased. So the current portion was 2.8 billion, and now it's just over 3 billion. And the long-term portion was lose my eyeballs here. The long-term portion was 3.35, and that's constant actually in Q3. So the current portion actually increased. The long-term portion is essentially unchanged. So how is the deferred revenue balance increasing when they're actually recognizing a huge amount of the FSD revenue? Now, granted, there's a lot of other noise in there, like supercharging miles and some stuff on the energy business that all kind of gets mixed in there. But it's pretty encouraging that they're able to have such strong margins, explicitly noting how much recognition of deferred FSD revenue is helping, and you're not seeing that balance decrease. So one thing that could imply is that FSD take rates are actually increasing. And that would be very, very good news indeed, but that's a bit of speculation.
Does anybody here know the exact profit margin of FSD today? Would it be 80%, 90%? Has anybody ever figured that out? I haven't been able to.
In terms of how much they're recognizing?
No, if you imagine they recognize 10 million, how much of that is pure profit?
I think almost all of it.
But do they not have to amortize 8-9 years of FSD development into it, or is that all written off already?
Well, that stays in the deferred cost. So I mean, let's say they fully launched FSD everywhere and they delivered all the features today. There would still be some amount of deferred FSD revenue just because like they've got to account for updates that they're going to have going forward. So my understanding of any FSD revenues that are recognized, it's essentially like 100% margin, but like you're I mean, there's really operating costs that go into that because the whole AI team is like their expenses essentially hit the overhead line, like R&D and probably mostly R&D, I would suspect. So that's like the cost of kind of developing the software that ultimately gets rolled out. So, if you sell a car today for $10,000, I think Tesla's probably recognizing around, I don't know why I said $10,000, $8,000 for FSD. I suspect Tesla's recognizing around 70%-ish of that revenue today based on how much they've delivered of the functionality. And maybe if they fully deliver every little piece that they've promised, they might recognize an extra, I don't know, 10% or something like that. And then the balance will just get recognized over time, over the expected life of the vehicle.
And Mark Newton from Fundstrat was very bullish too. He believed, if I'm not mistaken, this will be the last dip before the big rager to a new all-time high. Did anybody see that? Yeah. He's super bullish. And he estimates new all-time high within the next 6 to 7 months, I think. So
I've got a buddy of mine texting me. Is this all-time high for Tesla as far as cash on hand?
I think so, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But it's always all-time high, basically, because they're always having positive free cash flow.
Billions
Yeah,
every
but
quarter.
that's crazy though, right? Like going through everything that's going on, the ups and downs, the competition, just inflation period, all the discount. I mean, it's insane.
But especially scaling multiple gigafactories simultaneously. If you include Megafactory and the semi-gigafactory and also the battery facilities and the extensions to Giga Texas and so much more, it's pretty mind-blowing that they're still socking away so much free cash flow. Apparently, by the way, I just saw some breaking news that CNBS is fudding Tesla again. But I don't have TV, so I can't pick that up.
Mm-hmm.
But they probably have Gordon Johnson on.
Probably.
General Motors is coming. They're going to take over.
I would actually love to hear Gordon explain why this Q3 result is a disaster for Tesla. I'm sure he'd find some way, but even if I tried, it would be such a struggle.
His next line will be, "They're cooking the books. This isn't possible."
Oh, yeah. Oh, fraud. Yeah, fraud's always the answer when you're positive free cash flow.
And busted growth.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, their revenue was actually flat. So, clearly the only way they can get around with this is with fraud.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is, it's easier to kind of, I guess, grow revenue or grow profits when revenue's growing. It's harder when it's not, which is another angle, logically, sometimes.
I'm excited to see how quickly this Chinese Megapack factory gets up and running. They said they're going to start delivering. I mean, we saw what they did with the car factory. China knows how to produce and manufacture, and Tom Zhu there back in charge. That thing's going to just surprise us all, I think.
Yeah, I didn't realize his background until about a month ago was factory building. That's his skill, not cars or automotive. It was just building factories that build factories. So, and he's brilliant at it. But when is that Shanghai Megafactory done? January?
I think it's supposed to start producing. I don't know when it's going to roll out. I saw something where it says, I think it mentions they're going to start rolling out the first products from it in Q1. So
yeah, Jan Feb, amazing.
Yeah, I'm curious, Matt, what your take on. I mean, we're looking at 7 gigawatt hours deployed in this quarter. I know that's off a little bit from what we saw deployed in Q2, but it seems like another really strong quarter for deployments. Is that in line with, ahead of, or behind what your expectations would have been for the quarter?
Yeah, pretty much in line. So let me see what I actually put in my model here, because I can never keep all this straight. So in my model, I estimated 6.9 gigawatt hours, and I wasn't doing that just for the memes. I did think, I mean, with the way that these ramp, so it seems to me that Lathrop has been ramping. If they were at full capacity, that'd be 10 gigawatt hours per quarter. that we'd see, but there's also a little bit of power wall in there, so it gets a little bit messy. But with them being flat for so many quarters in a row, it just seemed very logical that they had built up a lot of mega packs, and just an unusually large number of them essentially took delivery and got qualified as a deployment in Q2. So it wasn't necessarily indicative of like some massive step change that we would never kind of like come back down from, or that we would never come back down from. So I was expecting a pullback, and the pullback was not as sharp as I had actually projected. So this is pretty good news, I think, that the deployments are still so strong, and especially when you couple that with the guidance that they had, essentially showing that they'll get to 9 gigawatt hours plus in Q4. The whole energy, I couldn't have asked for a better quarter on deployments, on margins, on outlook for energy. I mean, this is an absolute home run quarter for energy.
Yeah, and just digging into one of their claims as well, they said they would make a new record number. They'd have growth for 2024. I went back to Q4 2023, and they made 495,000 cars. So to break the record for 2024, they just need to do 20,000 more than they did a year ago. And Cybertruck didn't exist. Cybertruck alone will close that gap. So that's very achievable. What do you guys think?
My question
Yeah,
is always on demand. Go ahead, Hans.
Well, I think
they can pull the demand levers any way they want, so they can fill demand anyhow, I think.
Yeah, it seems like they're definitely, leaning all in on that right now with all the 0% financing here in the US, the $4,000 inventory discounts. I think they're really, pushing the pedal to the metal on trying to move as many cars as possible this quarter. And I think Q4 will be a strong quarter. I think that the, strength that we're seeing in China, between that and I think kind of rebounding in the consumer here in the United States, that the demand will be in the ballpark. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that they'll be able to meet that, as long as they can, don't hit any hiccups from a production standpoint, and we can actually deliver all the way across the board.
So I got
production's been solid. Like I don't expect anything there.
I have a philosophical question for you all. So the competition is reeling, first of all. Second of all, there's been a big uptick in the second half this year back into BEVs. So BEVs are not dead. Third of all, would you buy a dumb car if you were going to make that capital investment today, or would you buy a smart car that can drive itself? Because if I was investing, I would not dream in a million years of buying a dumb car. It would only be an FSD Tesla. What do you guys all think? Is that crazy, or is just, my diesel F-250 will still sell like hotcakes, or not? Nico, would you buy a dumb car? Putting you on the spot. Because it's going to amortize like hell.
Would I buy a dumb car? No, you're talking to the wrong person here, man.
I don't
Yeah, I
think
think-
anyone who knows about it would, but I only think like 2 to 5% of the population is aware of that, so Tesla doesn't really do itself any favors in educating the general public. They rely on people like us to try to educate them. So if more people were aware, yeah, for sure, demand would be through the roof, but it's just not enough people aware.
I also think that you'll see, like, I don't always agree with what you're saying, Emmett, in terms of like FSD and that part of it. I think once we see FSD wide, like once you can use it in Europe, once you can use it in China and Australia, etc., I think you'll see a actual campaign of trying to get people to adopt it. Why would they do that versus, like they don't do it really now with the vehicles? I mean, they've tried a little bit, but I don't know. I think it'll change once we're out of a beta supervised level of the product and they're ready to roll out worldwide. Wow, that's a tongue twister. You get what I'm saying?
Well, and then actually Smart Summon rolling out, I think that's a pretty important feature, and it does seem to get some traction and some play on social media. And so I think that is another, between that and the Cybertruck, like more Cybertrucks on the road. I think that those are both, definitely marginal demand levers that are significant.
I think banish is going to be what matters. Banish is the actual usefulness, not summon.
Yeah, Banish is big, and I think once they have these self-driving programs going without like the unsupervised full self-driving going, then it's going to sell itself, and they won't need to do kind of any kind of campaigns. They don't have to, there'll be tons of news, tons of people just start buying it. Fleet managers will get smart and buy it. But I think now is the time they would need to do some kind of campaign to like signal like, hey, this is coming. You want to buy any Teslas ahead of time? But yeah.
There's a
Just
question
my
in the
thought.
audience here. What is Banish? Can somebody explain Banish? Hans, give that to you.
Yeah, so that's just the ability for you to tell your car, hey, drop me off at the front of the grocery store or the doctor's office or wherever, and then it will go and find its own parking space. And Ashok has said that we will have that by the end of this month. He made a lot of very ambitious promises about what they would deliver in September, and they delivered on every single one of them. And so there's a high likelihood that sometime in the next 8 days, we will see a large number of customers actually have the ability to do that with their Tesla. And this is a first ever feature. We did have a version of Smart Summon back in the day that existed for customers for a little while. Then it was pulled, and but we never had Banish. We never had the ability for the car to actually go and find its own parking space for you. And it's going to be pretty incredible and exciting when it happens. Right now, with the new actually Smart Summon that's out, you can actually have the vehicle come to you in a parking lot now, and it's pretty impressive. It functions well. It's making good progress. And this ability to both come to you in a parking space or to go find its own parking space is a very important component of the overall FSD stack that's necessary for you to actually have an unsupervised version of FSD. If the car can't come pick you up or go find its own parking space, then it cannot actually be fully unsupervised. And so this is a big thing that has to be delivered in order for us to get to that unsupervised level.
Yeah.
Think about it this way. This is how I see it. Teslas are the only vehicles really out there at scale that you don't need to go to a gas station. They're the only vehicles that can drive themselves. Now, they will be the only vehicles where you never again, just the way you never have to go to a gas station or anything like that, you'll never again have to go park. You just go to the front of the supermarket, get out, car, go park yourself. You go to the mall, go to the front, car, go park yourself. You go to wherever, car, go park yourself. Never get. It's the ultimate valet.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things as well that I think are overlooked market segments for FSD. That is teenagers and the elderly who are, let's say, hard of driving or fraught with risk, drinking and driving use case. Could you imagine the people that just want to go out and they want their own limo driver and bring out their friends, sit in the back of the car and have fun? I wonder how the cops are going to deal with that in 2025. That's what I'm interested in. Like I had this cop staring in my window down in Los Angeles, and literally I thought he was going to pull me over. He was staring at me, and I'm sitting there. I had my phone in my hands. My hands were not on the steering wheel, and he was just staring me down, like waiting for me to crash or something. It's like I'm just doing nothing. But it's such a different time. It's going to be a radical change. But any thoughts on that? Like those market segments, like if, for example, if you got teenage kids, you don't want them driving a car that doesn't have all these safety features. Emmett, I see you knocking your head. You agree?
Yeah, I agree. I've said for years, I don't think any of my kids are going to drive. They're going to all have these cars driving for them. I'm happy for that, because I know when I was a kid learning to drive and doing crazy things, it was quite dangerous. So yeah, I'm excited that my kids at least won't have to drive ever.
Yeah, or imagine this scenario as well. There's an old people's home down the road, and you want to give back at the weekend. Say, hey, you guys want to go to the store?
Yeah.
take my Model X, go have
Yeah.
at it. So
Exactly right.
there's so many use cases that are very exciting. There was a question also in the audience, which I found quite interesting. People wanted to know how much Cybertruck was cannibalizing other models, the sexy models. I think it's a different market segment entirely. I don't think there's any cannibalization happening at all. Thoughts?
I agree. Very minimal, if any, cannibalization. If anything, it's net positive, is like Hans and others were saying earlier, just like seeing them on the road brings more awareness about Tesla for people to research it a little bit more in general.
Yeah. I got a little correction here. It's all good for drinking and driving as long as there's no booze in the car. No open booze, but you keep it in the trunk. So that is the law. I think, but it's not in all states, though. Can you have an open container in different states in the US?
I don't think so.
I'm sure. Okay.
That's a big no-no
Well,
here.
But with a cybercab, I mean, it's not like you can do any of the driving. So,
Yeah, good point.
like in a limo, you can in a limo, right?
Yeah. There's another funny question, too, regarding the Banish. How will the car pay for parking?
Oh,
Obviously,
I've thought about that.
yeah.
I've
Go,
actually put out a few posts about that, wishing that the Tesla software team would do something about it. So simple. It is so simple. You literally just incorporate the app that I have on my phone into the car, and you have the in-cabin camera. So as the time winds down, if you don't see me back in the vehicle, you just add time back to it. And I can predefine whether it's add in increments of 6 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever. And then, or if you see, someone coming to give a ticket or something, you just automatically up it. I mean, we have everything there already. Like it's not like it's a hard problem. It's a solved problem. You just have to implement it. Like it's so simple.
Or they could have Tesla self-charging stations. It can go charge while you're in the restaurant or the shopping
Or
area.
maybe
Or
it just drives in circles indefinitely around the parking lot until you get back. The first few months, they could probably get away with that when there's only a few of us out there, but in time that won't work.
Yeah. I mean, like there's only so many like apps out there, like per state, like here in Florida, like most of it's just Park Mobile. I don't know if you guys have that there, but that's what it for the most part is in Florida. So you just have the Park Mobile app there. It uses the in-cabin camera. You approve it, and that's it. I can just go park at any meter.
So this call about to come up. I mean, assuming Elon is on it, and he's not, delegating it to the other people, since he's like in Pennsylvania or wherever he is now, trying to help, on the political scene. Assuming Elon's on this call and like active in it, it seems like these first two say questions are really forcing him to reveal something about this, cheaper model that he's been reluctant, because he doesn't want the Osborne effect. They're reluctant to talk about it, but it's sort of like really trying to push him to reveal more about it. And so I feel like if he does, I feel like the stock is going to take another leg up, pretty quickly. And after hours, if he does reveal more about this next gen, it like reaffirms it on the call right there. Like, yeah, we're going to start producing it in Q2, and we expect to have 20% gross margins on it, and blah 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 blah. I just feel like it could be a nice piece of meat for investors to get.
I think with their scale, with their power over their suppliers, and potentially with the tax credit existing, it's not a far stretch at all to scale back the existing vehicle lineup or get to the Model 2.5, 2.5, and get to that 25K price point. I think they're well within reach. They can reduce the battery pack size, whip out a couple of features that make it more luxury, and get to that level. And I think as well, we know it's coming in first half of 2025, whether that's January or June, it's going to happen. But I think it's a given, but the market's not pricing it in yet because they're waiting for that 25K car. Hence,
I'm curious to actually discuss this a little bit with Sandy this week and just see from his point of view, if you had to make something that was halfway in between the Model 3 and the Model Y and what we saw that was unveiled for the Cybercab, and you were going to have to produce it on the current lines, what would that look like? In my mind, it potentially involves them actually converting everything over to castings, and because we know that they've still been running the Model 3s and the Ys with stampings. The last I knew, even in Austin, the Model Y was a rear casting, but it was still front stampings. And the Highland 3 out of Fremont, to the best of my knowledge, is entirely stampings. So you could add castings at both of those locations that were different, that bypass the entire stamping portion of the lines, and then come in down further than that, and have another vehicle. You do have to figure out how you're going to increase your cycle times down the whole rest of the line in order to have capacity for more vehicles than you're producing for the 3 and the Y in the stampings. But yeah, I think whatever it is likely something that's close to that compact, but then we'll share, the hood and grill will probably be more like the Highland Model 3. It'll be small. And yeah, I think it'll be not fully cybercab style. Like, I don't think that we're going to see, the more I've thought about this, the more I don't think that it's going to look exactly like the cybercab with the steering wheel and pedals. I think it's going to be something that's still a little bit more like a Model Y look, but obviously significantly smaller.
Well, that's where the twist is. So if I think about this problem, the new Model Y will look very like the Model 3, which means it'll be lower and sleeker. I think we all agree on that. Every car will have to have the foundational floor, which is the battery pack. So is there a way of, instead of doing the unboxing, which is extremely difficult and requires a lot of vertical space, maybe just front and back and have 2 different or 3 different variations, like slot them together around the floor? But then again, how do you work? Well, they can work easily with the roof, and the genius of the Teslas, the roof is glass, so it doesn't need that solid part there. But I'm trying to figure out how if it is front and back, how they squeeze them together, if that's even an option.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that those castings will provide some of the ability to do that in a way that is different than what they're doing with the 3. I wish I knew what the 3 line looked like. I wish I had an actual tour of the Fremont factory. I think that would really help.
Oh, they won't do it there. I don't think it's ready. I think they've got I think they have the mimicked or testing production line already built behind that big curtain in Giga, Texas. Because 1/4 of the floor is like a secret space. By the way, if you can pop up the chart, we just hit 233 on the price. So
nice.
It's getting stronger into the call, which is a little bit of positiveness for the people out there who are wondering what the stock price is. So it's not selling off at all. Broke through that resistance at 233. Sorry to disrupt.
Yeah, I'm just processing the idea that, I had assumed that every line that they have today was going to undergo some upgrades that gave them more capacity.
Yeah.
Except for S and X probably. But it is possible that they are just going to supercharge some lines in maybe Shanghai and Giga Austin, and then maybe potentially do something with the in Berlin.
Yeah, and that's why I'm thinking it'll be a front and back together, because the existing lines are linear. They don't have the ability to make them vertical and coming at the car from 4 angles at the same time. Just one theory. And also, if you can share that deck again, one of the things, the bingo card items, is a lot of people are asking about SpaceX. No, sorry, wrong slide. This one. I see this all the time. How do you guys get exposure to SpaceX, and will Tesla shareholders get access or a special, if you have 10,000 shares of Tesla, you can get the option to buy Y 1,000 shares of SpaceX, because it's a pain in the ass to buy through ARK or some of the other funds because it's not enough concentration of the asset. How are you guys approaching this, and do you believe there will be a special offer for Tesla shareholders?
I don't see a reason for them to go public anytime soon. I know that Elon talked about the potential for them to do that now that the revenues for Starlink are getting better, but I think with all of the headwinds that Elon has faced on a lawfare front over the past couple of years, if I was in his position, I would be a lot less excited about, like, I think they have all the liquidity they need. They can raise all the money that they need to raise. They've got plenty of cash flow. They can, if shareholders or employees, want to liquidate some shares, I think there's plenty of ability to do that right now. So I would personally just be very surprised if SpaceX actually went public anytime in the super near term, even though obviously I'd love to have exposure.
Yeah. And playing devil's advocate too, would you want to be invested in a company that's planning to go to Mars? Because that's going to be a big money sink. Anybody? Emmett, are you in SpaceX?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's your time horizon. I think colonizing Mars could become very, very profitable if your time horizon is long enough. But I think the Starlink is the real SpaceX closer term investment, incentive, is how big and how fast can Starlink grow, and to me, that's the biggest part of the valuation of SpaceX currently.
And the other question on my mind, they've illustrated that they can turn on, terrestrial cellular coverage through SpaceX. If that's the case, Elon becomes persona non grata with every mobile cell phone company in the world, which is an unenviable position to be in, because they will just destroy. You could have your cell phone package and your mobile internet package on the back of your boat or whatever, and that's it.
When do you guys think? Yeah, and to that point, when do you think they're going to include Starlink into the Tesla cars? Is it going to be one of these next models? Is it going to be the Juniper? Is it going to be just an option they offer on the S and the X at first? They already have test cars with it, apparently, somewhat built in. I mean, it seems obvious to me that you would just add Starlink to every car you make sooner or later.
I think the RFID radiation will be a concern for many, not to have that running the whole time in the vehicle, but that's just tinfoil hat thing concern. And you can easily put the mobile one on the back of a Cybertruck, and I can run off that pretty easily.
As I have it, and I have the I had to get some third-party mounts, and probably if I was like a handyman at home, it'd be easy for me, but I'm not the biggest handyman, so it's like sitting in my garage. I'm waiting for a friend of mine who's sort of a handyman to help me put it on my Cybertruck. But I would love it if Tesla factory installed it when I bought it. I'd pay them, whatever for their option for that.
It definitely would be interesting as an option. I expect it to come standard on, cyber cabs and robovans.
For sure.
I don't know if it would be something that would come standard before then or not. That would be definitely a great option to have on new vehicle sales.
Yeah. I mean, the gaming, the streaming, they want it to be like a lounge-like experience in the robo cab and the robovan. So it'll be, I think, for sure on those things, but that's a couple of years out before they're really produced. So I wonder if before then it'll be an option on some of the Tesla lineup.
Especially, I feel like Cybertruck is a great fit for it because, if you're going out in the middle of nowhere with the Cybertruck, you definitely would benefit from having that onboard connectivity.
Yeah, I just want it as anyway on my Cybertruck. So when my Cybertruck's in my driveway, it's like next to my office, my home office. It's also like a nice backup contingency for my home, landline. If something goes out, I just plug right into the Wi-Fi. I turn on the Wi-Fi in my Cybertruck while it's parked in the garage, and it works for the house from there easily too.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think many people are at the cusp because what is it now? It's only $120 per month, whereas most high-speeder home is $100. And I can't remember what the mobile version is, but is the mobile good enough to run your home and take it with you when you're away from home? So that'd be neat. Going for a transatlantic crossing or something.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I mean, unless you're like have a bunch, if you have like a bunch of people like streaming at the same time and gaming, maybe I don't, it seems like it's more than enough for me and my family. The mobile Starlink would be, but I don't, we don't have a bunch of kids streaming crazy video games at the same time that I hear takes up a lot of bandwidth.
Cool.
Well, so let's recap here for those who may just be joining the stream. Welcome. We've got the Tesla earnings call coming up here shortly. We've already looked at the shareholder deck and the financials. Pretty big beat on a number of all the most important metrics. Slight miss on overall revenue, but net profits above expectations. EPS was quite a significant beat, even a beat with if you factored out the regulatory the rev credits. And so exciting to see the performance. We've got the stock price is responding, the market is responding quite positively to what we've seen so far. And heading into the earnings call here shortly, scheduled about 10 minutes from now. We'll see if Tesla's on time. And if you've noticed, yes, Farzad is not here with us today. He's actually, today is his anniversary. So happy anniversary, Farzad and Cindy. Hope they are having a great afternoon, not having to sit here glued to the stock price and listening to all of us ramble on our pontifications for Tesla in the future.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaways to summarize, the most standout points for me is a 23% earnings beat. And if you look at all the retail expectations, it was way lower. Everybody expected it to miss and not hit 60 cents, instead 72.5 cents. The other big thing for me was the fact that Cybertruck has reached profitability in just 3 quarters on a third of what their scale volume will be, which is staggering to think of. Any other big things jump out at you guys? Oh, yeah, free cash flow, 1.75 billion over expectations. And that is probably the core key metric that I'm most interested in anyway. I think it was 2.72 versus 1.9 billion.
Yeah. To me, what stood out, I think, is the outlook. I'll let you go in a second, Matt. Sorry, I didn't remember. But the outlook, the product outlook, where they kind of reaffirm there's a lower cost vehicle for the first half of 25 to start production. And separately is the purpose-built robotaxi with an unboxed manufacturing strategy. So it's not like the same vehicle being repurposed as a lower cost vehicle, so that, to me, that I think was a big reason why the stock's up. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the highlights for me on the energy side, that was a very big surprise. 30.5% gross margins and guidance for Q4 to be at 9 gigawatt hours or higher of deployments. So both of those were a lot higher than I was expecting. So very, very good news on the energy side. And I think people are going to need to start kind of re-underwriting that. I was just doing some more math kind of in the background of, okay, if they do 9 or 10 gigawatt hours a quarter, at these prices and at these margins, you're at the point where you're getting over $1 billion of gross margin contribution from the energy business. And that's like now, that's like next year, essentially. In the coming quarters, you'll be at that run rate. So, I mean, even if you kind of tax affect that, you're at like roughly $1 of earnings contribution on the energy side in the very foreseeable future. And with that very the higher growth rate than you have on automotive going forward. So that's, I think we're kind of in this territory where analysts are going to have to really start doing their diligence on the energy piece of the business and start modeling that out separately, because it really, with how high margin it is and how quickly it's growing, it really is starting to have an outsized impact, I think, on valuation, even higher than I thought. And I've thought about this for a lot.
By the way, I just found a little Easter egg in the report as well. Under the battery powertrain manufacturing section, They talked about the Cybercab. It'll be built on our next generation platform, which includes a new powertrain with an estimated 5.5 mile per kilowatt hour. That will be our most efficient powertrain yet. And of course, Q3, they produced their 100 millionth 4680s. That's huge. By the way, my Cybertruck is more efficient than my Model X, which I have to scratch my head as to why. I know, Emmett, you've got the same fleet, don't you, as me?
Yeah, I love the don't you think the Cybertruck's the best product by far? I mean, I love
Oh
my
my God.
Model X, but the Cybertruck, I've had it about a year. I still love it. It's such a delight to drive.
It's quiet, it's comfortable, and the FSD is extremely precise. There is a delta between hardware 3 and hardware 4, no doubt about that. But I actually calculated 2,500 miles. I got exactly 3.48 miles per kilowatt hour.
Wow.
Which the X gets about 3.33, if I'm not mistaken. And I measure this stuff religiously, like I measure everything else. But I was completely blown away by that efficiency. Now, I do drive pretty easy. I'm not driving like a madman because I have the Tesla
better
insurance.
than the Model X. I'm assuming you're driving the same roads as both cars.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that at what speed is that?
I normally don't go over 72. I hit 80 when I need to get out of trouble, but keep it around 72 and keep the internal temperature, air conditioning at 72 as well. So 72 miles an hour, 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Sometimes I use the cooled seat as well instead of air conditioning because I find that's probably more efficient than cooling the whole car, but I could be wrong there. I need a scientist to test that out. Hans, what do you think? Cool the chair or the whole car?
Probably the chair, I would think. I mean, it depends on their system, and I haven't seen a detailed breakdown on that yet, but I would think the chair.
Yeah, these are first world problems, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry.
Yeah, see, I'm just waiting for them to release unsupervised robotaxi in Florida. So once they do that, I can put my water white into that, and then I can get my Cybertruck. So Tesla, if you're listening, California, Texas, and Florida.
Yeah.
One more question real quick. Speaking of the Robotech, Nico, on that point is how many people do you think there are like us, maybe just in the Tesla community, waiting for the unsupervised robotaxi to become official to start buying a bunch of like a dozen cars to have their own little robotaxi fleet business? I'm personally really thinking about doing that. And I think there's a lot of people.
I would say of the people who have purchased FSD or have it, like there's three types of people. People who don't know FSD exists, people who discovered FSD and just have a subscription but don't really get the whole point of it, of what it can be. And then there's the people like us that really understand what's going on. So the people who actually understand what's going on, I would say at least 90% of them are waiting.
Yeah, and that's one of the topics that I think, it'll be sadly another typical first mover advantage. I always say get in early, get in hard. But I do know people that are stacking mini fleets because prudently, you should be able to make 20, maybe in a stretch, 30,000 a year per vehicle. If you can buy a secondhand Model 3 or Model Y from Hertz or something like that, and then turn it into your fleet and become a shepherd, you got 5 of them. That's enough to retire on. No?
Matt and I know a guy in Europe, Mr. Green, who has like 5,000 Teslas, but they're probably all like hardware 1. They're probably a lot of old cars.
I think they're mostly hardware 3, actually, but they do have a lot of like older Model S's and everything like that. But the interesting thing about them is their business model just kind of works on its own because the powertrain on these lasts so long. So, the banks will only underwrite for one lease term, but they're finding they can just take it and write a second lease on a used vehicle, which works pretty well. So, and then they've got this upside optionality of autonomy. But I wouldn't want to be beholden to the EU regulatory regime in the way that they are, which is rather unfortunate.
Yeah,
well, I've actually seen Florian he's been putting out on social media that he wants to partner with
30 seconds,
local people here in the United States who want to be shepherds. So yeah, I do have the stream pulled up right now. It's just music. So as soon as we hear
by the way,
something besides music,
while we're talking about longevity of these cars, I have a more than 5.5-year-old Model X, and my range is longer than when I first bought it. So there's been no depletion of battery range in this car after over 50,000 miles in 5.5 years. So it's quite incredible. I can hear dance music.
Yeah, I think most people who understand what Tesla's doing, I think they would put their existing vehicle into the fleet. If nothing else, just like it's just prudent, right? If especially if I want to update what Tesla I'm driving, if I want a newer Tesla, like I don't want to like quote unquote take a loss on mine or sell it for less or trade it in. I'd rather just put in the fleet, have at least break even, if not make me some beer money, and I can go buy my next Tesla.
Stuck at 234.
That's crazy because it was only an expected 15% move, or 15%, a $15 move.
Yeah.
And Tesla tends to normally pretty much fall in line with the expected move. This is way beyond.
I hope that the answer to the first two questions takes another leg higher. If Elon kind of goes into some detail, he might refrain from saying anything and say pass. We'll talk about future product releases. That's what he might do. But if he, because it's the first two questions, if he does like talk about it with some detail, I think that could really be good.
If he does that, if he passes on it, I hope he says to everybody, guys, how many times do I have to tell you this? Ask better questions.
I can't talk about
I don't
future
think he
product
answers
releases.
those.
Yeah.
But seriously, it's like,
yeah.
come on, ask better questions. Like this is like, remember when Gali like blew up because the whole YouTube thing? It's like, what's happening? Are we becoming just as bad with these questions?
Yeah, I actually had the exact same thought. I was like, man, these questions, I wish we could have another go to YouTube moment and just hand the mic over to Gally and Rob and let them ask questions that are not terrible.
Law of the commons, my friend.
Yeah, ever since they told Rob to stop pushing his own questions on Tesla Daily, I think the quality has gone way down.
That's true.
100% agreed.
Cut his hair.
Yeah.
There's another question from the audience. Where do you see the price in 12 months? My stab is 350 to 400, maybe higher if unsupervised FSD and robotaxi launches live in California and Texas. Thoughts around the clock here?
I think if unsupervised robotaxi starts going.
We started.
Oh, here we go.
Can you share your screen?
Head of Investor Relations, and I'm joined today by Elon Musk, Vaibhav Taneja, and a number of other executives. Our Q3 results were announced at about 3 p.m. Central Time in the update deck we published at the same link as this webcast. During this call, we will discuss our business outlook and make forward-looking statements. These comments are based on our predictions and expectations as of today. Actual events or results could differ materially due to a number of risks and uncertainties, including those mentioned in our most recent filings with the SEC. During the question and answer portion of today's call, please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up. Please use the raise hand button to join the question queue. Before we jump into Q&A, Elon has some opening remarks. Elon?
Thank you. So to recap, as someone saying, it's something that automotive industry are seeing year-over-year declines in order volumes in Q3. Tesla at the same time has achieved record deliveries. In fact, I think if you look at EV companies worldwide, to the best of my knowledge, no EV company is even profitable. And I'm not, to the best of my knowledge, there's no EV division of any company, of any existing auto company that is profitable. So it is notable that Tesla is profitable despite a very challenging automotive environment. And this quarter actually is a record Q3 for us. So we produced our 7th million vehicle actually just yesterday. So congratulations to the teams that made it happen at Tesla. That's a staggeringly immense amount of work to make 7 million cars. Let's see, and we also have the energy storage business is growing like wildfire with strong demand for both Megapack and Powerwall. And as people know, on October 10th, we laid out a vision for an autonomous and electric future that I think is very compelling. The Tesla team did a phenomenal job there with actually giving people an opportunity to experience the future, where you have humanoid robots walking among the crowd, not with a canned video presentation or anything, but literally walking among the crowd, serving drinks and whatnot. And we had 50 autonomous vehicles. There were 20 Cybercaps, but there were an additional 30 Model Ys operating fully autonomously the entire night, carrying thousands of people doing, with no incidents the entire night. And for those who went there, it's worth emphasizing that the Cybercap had no steering wheel or brake or accelerator pedals, meaning there was no way for anyone to intervene manually, even if they wanted to, and the whole night went very smoothly. So, regarding the vehicle business, we are still on track to deliver more affordable models starting in the first half of 2025. This is, I think, probably people are wondering, well, what should they assume for vehicle sales growth next year? And at the risk of to take a bit of risk here, I do want to give some rough estimate, which is, I think, 20 to 30% vehicle growth next year. Notwithstanding negative external events, like if there's some force majeure events, like some big war breaks out or interest rates go sky high or something like that, then we can't overcome massive force majeure events. But I think with our lower cost vehicles, with the advent of autonomy, something like a 20 to 30% growth next year is my best guess. And then Cybercap reaching volume production in 26. We do feel confident of Cybercap reaching volume production in 26, not just starting production, but reaching volume production in 26. And that that should be substantial growth. We're aiming for at least 2 million units a year of Cybercab. That'll be in more than one factory, but I think it's at least 2 million units a year, maybe 4 million ultimately. These are just my best guesses, but if you ask me what my best guess is, those are my best guesses. The 46, the cell 4680 lines, the team is actually doing great work there. The 4680 is rapidly approaching the point where it is the most competitive cell. So when you consider the fully landed, the cost of a battery pack fully landed in the US, net of incentives and duties, the 4680 is tracking to be the most competitive, meaning lower cost per kilowatt hour fully considered than any other alternative, which is not quite there yet, but we're close to being there, which I think is extremely exciting. And we've got a lot of ideas to go well beyond that. So I think if we execute well, the 4680 will have the Tesla internally produced cell will be the most cost competitive cell in certainly North America. A testament to a tremendous amount of hard work there by the team. So that's a rule. We'll continue to buy a lot of cells from our competitors. Our intent is not to make cells just internally. So I don't want to set off any alarm bells here. We're obviously increasing substantially our vehicle output and our stationary storage output. So we need a lot of cells. And most of them will still come from suppliers, but I think it is some good news that the Tesla internal cell is tracking to be the most competitive in the US. So with respect to autonomy, as people are experiencing in the cars, really from week to week, there are significant improvements in the miles between interventions. So with the new version 12.5, the release of full self-driving in Cybertruck, the combining the code into a single stack so that the city driving and the end-to-end highway driving are one stack, which is a big improvement for the highway driving. So it's just all neural nets, and the release of actually Smart Summon. We try to have a sense of humor here at Tesla. And we're also, so that's 12.5. Version 13 of FSD is going out soon. Ashok will elaborate more on that later in the call. We expect to see roughly a 5 or 6-fold improvement in miles between interventions compared to 12.5. And actually, looking at the year as a whole, the improvement in miles between interventions, we think will be at least 3 orders of magnitude. So that's a very dramatic improvement in the course of the year, and we expect that trend to continue next year. So the current internal expectation, emphasize internal expectation for the Tesla FSD having longer miles between intervention than human is the second quarter of next year, which means it may end up being the third quarter, but it's next. It seems extremely likely to be next year. Sure, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, when measuring miles between critical interventions, yeah, like you mentioned, Elon, we already made a 100x improvement with 12.5 from starting of this year, and then with V13 release, we expect to be 1000x from the beginning, from January of this year on my production release software. And this came in because of technology improvements, going to end-to-end, having higher frame rate, partly also helped by hardware force, more capabilities, so on. And we hope that we continue to scale the neural network, the data, the training compute, etc. By Q2 next year, we should cross over the average human miles per critical intervention, or like collision in that case.
I mean, that is just unvarnished our internal estimate.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's not sandbagging or anything else. Our internal estimate is Q2 of next year to be safer than human, and then to continue with rapid improvements thereafter. Now a lot. Vast majority of humanity has no idea that Teslas can drive themselves. So, especially for something like a Model 3 or Model Y, it looks like a normal car. So you don't expect a normal car to be able to be intelligent enough to drive itself. Yeah, Cybercab looks different. Cybertruck looks different, but Model Y and Model 3 they're good-looking cars, but they look fairly normal. You don't expect a fairly normal-looking car to have the intelligence, enough AI to be able to drive itself, but it does. So we do want to expose that to more people, and so we're doing, every time we have a significant improvement in the software, we'll roll out another sort of 30-day trial, so to encourage people to try it again. And we are seeing a significant improvement in adoption. So the take rate for FSD has improved substantially, especially after the 1010 event. Yeah, so there's no need to wait for robotaxi or Cybercab to experience full autonomy. We expect to achieve that next year with our existing vehicle lineup.
What it's worth, actually, Smart Summon gives a small taste of what it's going to look like. The car able to drive itself to the user within private parking lots. Currently, it's speed limited, but then it's going to quickly be increased. And we already had more than 1 million usage items of Smart Summon.
Yep. So, And we actually have for Tesla employees in the Bay Area, we already are offering a ride-hailing capability. So you can actually use with the development app, you can request a ride, and it'll take you anywhere in the Bay Area. We do have a safety driver for now, but the software required to do that. We've developed, and I mean, David, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. It's David. We showed some screenshots of this in the Q1 shareholder deck, and yeah, this is real. We've been testing it for the better part of the year, and the building blocks that we needed in order to build this functionality and deliver it to production, we've been thinking about and working on for years. It just so happens that we've used those building blocks to deliver great features for our customers in the meantime, such as sharing your profile, synchronizing it across cars, so that every single car that you jump into, whether it's another car that you own or a car that somebody's loaned to you or a rental car that you jump into, it looks exactly like yours. Everything's synchronized, seat mirror positions, media, navigation, everything is the same, just what you would expect from one of our robotaxis. But we gave that functionality to our customers right now because we built it intending for it to be used in the future. Releasing that functionality now. All the end-to-end cybersecurity that we knew we were going to need to deliver that functionality, sending a navigation to destination from your phone to the vehicle. And so, you're doing that now with the ride-hailing app, but it's something that we've made available to customers for years. Seeing the progress on a route in the mobile app, that's something you'll need for the ride-hailing app, but again, we released it in the meantime. So it's not like we're just starting to think about this stuff right now while we're building out, the early stages of our ride-hailing network. We've been thinking about this for quite a long time, and we're excited to get the functionality out there.
Yeah, and we do expect to roll out ride-hailing in California and Texas next year to the public. Now, the California is there's quite a long regulatory approval process. I think we should get approval next year, but it's contingent upon regulatory approval. Texas is a lot faster, so it's I'd say we'll definitely have it available in Texas, and probably have it available in California, subject to regulatory approval, and then maybe some other states actually next year as well, but at least California and Texas. So I think that'll be very exciting. That's really a profound change. Tesla becomes more than a sort of vehicle and battery manufacturing company at that point. So we published our Q3 vehicle safety report, which shows one crash for every 7 million miles of autopilot. That compares to the U.S. average of one crash roughly every 700,000 miles. So it's currently showing a 10x safety improvement relative to the US average. And we continue to expand our AI training capacity to accommodate the needs of both FSD and Optimus. We're currently not training compute constrained. That's probably the biggest limiting factor is that the FSD is actually getting so good that it takes us a while to actually find mistakes. And when you start getting to where it can take 10,000 miles to find a mistake, it takes a while to actually figure out which is this build, is this software build better than software build A better than software build B? It actually takes a while to figure it out because neither one of them are making mistakes. Or take a long time to make mistakes. So that's actually the single biggest limiting factor is how long does it take us to figure out which version is better. So sort of high-class problem. Obviously, having a giant fleet is very helpful for breaking this out. And then with Optimus, we showed a massive improvement in Optimus's dexterity and movement on October 10th, and our next gen hand and forearm, which has 22 degrees of freedom, which is double the prior hand and forearm. It's extremely human-like. It also has much better tactile sensing. It's really, I feel confident saying that we have the most advanced humanoid robot by a long shot. And we're moreover the only company that really has all of the ingredients necessary to scale humanoid robots. Because the things that what other companies are missing is that they're missing the AI brain, and they're missing the ability to really scale to very high volume production. So you sometimes see some impressive video demos, but they lack the localized AI and the ability to scale volume to very high numbers. As I've said on a few occasions before, I think Optimus will ultimately be the most valuable part of it. So, and I think it has a good chance of being the most valuable product ever made. For the energy business, that's doing extremely well. And there's the opportunity ahead is gigantic. The Lathrop Megapack factory reached 200 megapacks a week, which is now a 40 gigawatt hour a year run rate. And we have a second factory in Shanghai that will begin with a 20 gigawatt hour a year run rate in Q1 next year, so just next quarter. That'll also scale up. It won't be long before we're shipping 100 gigawatt hours a year stationary storage at Tesla. And it'll that'll ultimately grow, I think, to multiple terawatt hours per year. It has to, actually, in order to have a sustainable energy future. If you're not at the terawatt scale, you're not really moving the needle. So if you look at our admittedly very complicated last master plan, which I think actually has too much detail, maybe I'll ask Grok to analyze it and
shorten it up.
Yeah, give us the TLDR on the last master plan. But we showed in that master plan that it is possible to take all of Earth to a fully sustainable energy situation using sustainable energy, power generation, and batteries and electric transport. And there are no fundamental material limitations. Like there's not some very rare material that we don't have enough of on Earth. We actually have enough of the raw materials to take all of human civilization, make it fully sustainable. And even if civilization dramatically increased its electricity usage, it could still be fully sustainable. One way to think of the progress of a civilization, it's may sound a little esoteric, but is percentage completion of Kardashev scale. So Kardashev scale 1 would be you're using all the power of a planet. We're currently less than 1% on Kardashev level 1. Level 2 would be using all the power of the sun. And level 3, all the power of the galaxy. So we got a long way to go. Long way to go. When you think in Kardashev terms, it becomes obvious that by far the biggest source of energy is the sun. Everything else is in the noise. So, so in conclusion, Tesla is focused on building the future of energy, transport, robotics, and AI. And this is a time when others are just focused on managing around near-term trends. We think what we're doing is the right approach, and if we execute on our objectives, and I think we will, Tesla, my prediction is Tesla will become the most valuable company in the world, and probably by a long shot. I want to thank the Tesla team once again for strong execution in a tough operating environment, and we're looking forward to building an incredibly exciting future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Elon. And Bob has some opening remarks as well.
Yeah, thanks. Our Q3 results were overall positive and once again demonstrate the scale to which business has evolved over the years with the generation of record operating cash flows of $6.3 billion. Our automotive revenues grew both quarter-on-quarter and year-on-year. While we had unit volume growth, we did experience reduction in ASPs, primarily due to the impact of financing incentives. As a reminder, we are providing these incentives primarily using third-party banks and financial institutions and recognize the cost of these incentives as an upfront reduction to revenue. We released FSD for Cybertruck and other features like actually smart someone like Elon talked about in North America, which contributed 326 million of revenues in the quarter. We continue to see elevated levels of regulatory credit sales with over 2 billion of revenues so far this year. To expand on this at an industry level, China continues to outperform US and Europe by a factor of 3. And if there is something to be learned from that, this gives a signal of what is to come in other regions as customers' acceptance of EV grows. And we feel that is the right strategy to build affordable and more compelling leads. Our focus remains on growing unit volume while avoiding a buildup of inventory. To support this strategy, we're continuing to offer extremely compelling vehicle financing options in every market. When you compare any vehicle in our lineup with other OEMs, we believe our vehicles provide much better value, particularly when you consider the safety features, performance, and unparalleled software functionalities like David also talked about, include also what Ashok had talked about around autonomy, music options, parental controls, and much more. While every vehicle in our lineup comes up with these capabilities, there is an awareness gap, not just with buyers, but at times even with existing owners. We plan on making these more visible in our interactions with both existing and future customers. Automotive margins improved quarter-over-quarter as a result of FSD feature release discussed before. Increase in our overall production and delivery volume, continued benefit from commodity pricing, and more localized deliveries in region, which resulted in lower freight and duties. Sustaining these margins in Q4, however, will be challenging given the current economic environment. Note that we are focused on the cost per vehicle, and there are numerous work streams within the company to squeeze out cost without compromising on customer experience.
Yeah, something that's a helpful, hopefully a helpful macro trend is if there's a decline in interest rates, this has a massive effect on the on automotive demand. The vast majority of people, the demand is driven by the monthly payment. Can they afford the monthly payment? So we most likely will see continued decline in interest rates, which helps with affordability of vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, that is one trend which we observed in the industry that, because of the affordability being impacted because of interest rates, people are holding on to the cars longer, especially in the US. And that is actually having an impact on the overall industry too. As we discussed earlier, as we discussed in prior quarters, energy deployments fluctuate quarter-over-quarter due to customer readiness, location of orders being fulfilled, and not necessarily an indicator of demand or production within the quarter. While we did see a decline in Q3, we expect to grow deployments sequentially in Q4 to end the year with more than double the of last year. Energy margins in Q3 were a record at more than 30%. This is a function of mix of projects being deployed in the quarter. Note that there will be fluctuation in margins as we manage through deployments and our inventory. Our pipeline and backlog continue to grow quarter-over-quarter as we fill our 2025 production slots, and we're doing our level best to keep up with the demand. Just coming back on automotive margins, I talked about what is happening. One other thing which I want to also share is that we will continue to keep whatever we can to squeeze, like I said before, about squeezing out the cost. But this is something which we also are very capable of. I mean, just in Q3, we reached our lowest cost per vehicle, and that is a trend which we want to keep focus on. Then going on to service and other, we continue to show improvements in Q3. This was a result of better performance both in our service business, which includes collision, part sales, and merchandise, and continued growth in supercharging. These fleet-based revenues will continue to grow as the overall fleet size increases. Our operating expenses declined quarter-over-quarter and on a year-on-year basis. This is partially due to the restructuring we undertook in Q2. Cost saving from these initiatives were partially offset by increase in costs related to our AI efforts. We've started using the GPU cluster based out of our factory in Austin ahead of schedule and are on track to get 50K GPUs deployed in Texas by the end of this month. One thing which I'd like to elaborate is that we're being very judicious on our AI compute spend too, and saying how best we can utilize the existing infrastructure before making further investments. On the CapEx front, we had over $3.5 billion in the quarter. This was a sequential increase.
Did you guys lose audio?
Yeah, we lost Tesla.
Yes.
But this call is absolutely freaking mind blowing. I'm catching 16 major nuggets
Because
that
of
are.
investments in AI compute,
Oh,
Sorry.
we now expect the CapEx for the year to be in excess of $11 billion. We shared our vision for the future at the We Robot event at the beginning of the month. The Tesla team is hyper-focused on delivering on that vision, and all efforts are underway to make it a reality. While we've achieved significant progress this year, it will take time to get this as we pioneer new and incredibly complex technologies and navigate a fragmented regulatory landscape. Future is incredibly bright, and I want to thank the Tesla team once again for all their hard work.
Great. Thank you very much, Vaibhav. Now we'll go to investor questions. The first one is Tesla still on track to deliver the more affordable model next year, as mentioned by Elon earlier? And how does it align with your AI product roadmap?
Sure. I mean, as Elon and Vaibhav both said, we are in plan to meet that in the first half of next year. Our mission has always been to lower the cost of our vehicles to increase the adoption of sustainable energy and transport. Part of that is lowering the cost of our current vehicles, which is where all of the personally owned vehicles that we sell today come in. But the next stage in that really, as it fits into AI roadmap, is when we bring in robotaxis, which lowers the initial cost of getting into an EV. And that's really where we see the marriage of EV roadmap and the AI roadmap.
Yeah. It'll be like with incentives sub 30K, which is kind of a key threshold.
Great. Thank you very much. Similar question next. When can we expect Tesla to give us the $25,000 non-robotaxi regular car model?
We're not making it on robot.
Yeah, all our vehicles today are robotaxis.
I think we've made very clear that we're the future is autonomous. I mean, it's going to be, and I actually said this many years ago, but that in my strong belief, and I believe that is panning out to be true, and it'll be very obvious in retrospect, is that the future is autonomous electric vehicles. And non-autonomous gasoline vehicles in the future will be like riding a horse and using a flip phone. It's not that there are no horses. Yeah, there are some horses, but they're unusual. They're niche. So it just everything's going to be electric autonomous. I think this is blind, like it should be frankly blindingly obvious at this point that is the future. So a lot of automotive companies, most automotive companies, have not internalized this, which is surprising, because we've been shouting this from the rooftops for such a long time, and it will accrue to their detriment in the future. But all of our vehicles in the future will be autonomous.
Even today.
Yeah, yes, all the vehicles that we've really made, all the 7 million vehicles, the vast majority are capable of autonomy. We're currently making on the order of 35,000 autonomous vehicles a week. If you compare that to, say, Waymo's entire fleet, they have less than 1,000 cars. We make 35K a week.
Yeah, and our cars look normal.
Yeah, they mostly look normal. The Cybertruck looks,
Yes.
thankfully, looks abnormal. And then the Cybercab / robotaxi, we wanted to have something futuristic looking, and I think it does look futuristic. And it's worth noting with respect to the Cybercab, it's actually not just a revolution in vehicle design, but a revolution in vehicle manufacturing that is also coming with the Cybercab. The cycle time, like the units per hour of the Cybercab line, is like, this is just really something special. I mean, this is will be half order of magnitude better than other car manufacturing lines. Like not in the same league is what I'm saying. Not in the same league. So it's and I said several years ago that maybe the hardest Tesla product to copy will be the factory. You can't just like buy a factory.
Yeah, you can't reverse engineer a factory. It's have to buy it.
Yeah, it's like, if we can, yeah. We're rapidly evolving our manufacturing technology. So anyway, there's like basically, I think having a regular 25K model is pointless.
Yeah,
It would be silly. Like, it would be completely at odds with what we believe.
in an autonomous world, what matters is the lowest cost per mile of efficiency of that vehicle, and that's what we've done with the robotaxi.
Exactly. Autonomous, it's fully considered cost per mile, is what matters. And if you try to make a car that is, essentially a hybrid manual automatic car, it's not going to be as good as a dedicated autonomous car. So yeah, Cybercab is just not going to have steering wheels and pedals. It's fully designed, optimized for autonomy. But no, it'll cost on the order of cost roughly 25K. So it is a 25K car, and you will be able to buy one on it exclusively if you want. So just won't have steering wheel and pedals. You don't need it.
Great. Thank you very much. The next question is, what is Tesla doing to alleviate long wait times at service centers?
So we aim on solving problems at the source, so at the factory, before they can even affect our customers. We believe the best service is no service, and
Yeah, it really is.
don't even have them.
If the car doesn't break,
Yeah, exactly.
that's the best thing.
Don't see anyone with the Tesla shirt. You either do it remote, fix the issue upstream, or do it remotely, do it through software. They can be at work or at home, and car can be parked, and we address and fix the issue. And we've partnered the field with service to make sure we're looking at the same issues. And additionally, just in Q3 and Q4 of this year alone, we have opened and will open in total at nearly 70 locations. And in North America, we significantly expanded the size of each location and have doubled the size last year compared to this year.
Yeah, I think there's like actually a lot of merit to having large service centers, because you can have specialization of labor. You can start it should be more factory-like, where you can have dedicated lanes for particular types of service, and it's way easier for somebody to become expert in a few different types of repairs than in every repair.
Exactly. This has helped us with the base instead of these heavy repairs, like clogging up a lane. There's dedicated lanes for different type of repairs, and so it's throughput matters and really treating it like a factory.
Yeah, this is where Tesla's structure, I think, Tesla has a structural advantage relative to the rest of the auto industry, because we make the cars and we service the cars, whereas I think there's a bit of a conflict of interest with the dealer model and the sort of traditional OEM and dealer model, where the dealerships make most of their money on service, and so they obviously are disincented to reduce the servicing cost.
Yeah.
Whereas in our case, we are incented to reduce the servicing cost because we carry that servicing cost, and we've got a good feedback loop with our cars.
The best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like we would be with the factory, with the service leaders together, and send people from the factories to the field and field to the factory to see it firsthand.
Exactly.
Provide suggestions for manufacturing as well as for engineering on design.
Yeah, so I view this as a fundamental structural advantage of Tesla versus the rest of the auto industry.
Also doing a bunch of work on the software side, not only to automate, diagnostics, so identifying what needs to be done to a car before it comes into service, but also automating all of the preparation work and aligning all the resources that are necessary in order for the car to be very efficiently worked on once it arrives. So the parts are there, like the lift is scheduled, the technician schedule, like everything.
Like the car says, this is what's wrong with me, and tells the service center.
The car
Get everything ready in advance.
Yeah, please fix me, and this is what's wrong.
Yeah, this is what I recommend you do now. This is what I recommend.
Yeah.
Instead of customer trying to translate, the car is telling us directly, and we're pulling that. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need, most of the time you don't need to diagnose the car when it arrives. The car, this is like, again, a fundamental technology advantage and structural advantage compared to the rest of the auto industry.
I think it's underappreciated as to what all we are able to do.
Yeah.
And that's why, because like you said before, most of our cars, except for Cybertruck, look the same.
Yeah.
Right? So people don't realize that it has so much capability.
Yeah. They look better than other cars, but they're not like obviously like super futuristic.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. The next question is, please provide an update on the Semi. What will the next stage of growth look like, and when will FSD be ready?
Sure. So as we posted in the earnings deck, we're progressing swiftly on the build of the semi factory in our Gigafactory in Reno. We've released all our major capital expenditures for that program, and we're on track to start pilot builds in the second half of next year, with production starting the first half of 2026 and ramping really throughout the year to full production. Semi, growth will largely depend on our customers' adoption of the product.
Well, I don't think we're going to be demand limited, honestly.
Yeah, which I was going to say, which is like a
Not at all.
no-brainer for the Semi, because it's really a commodity of total cost of ownership.
Yes, exactly. It's good. We have kind of ridiculous demand for the Semi.
In that world where it's about how much do I spend to move goods
exactly.
cents per mile, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, fundamentally, if you've got a Semi where the fully considered cost per mile for a ton of transport is better than, say, a diesel truck, any company that doesn't adopt an electric Semi will lose. It's not a subjective thing. It's like of whether do you like
It's a competitive.
I mean, we want the stat. We want to have a beautiful semi truck, but frankly, if we made an ugly semi truck, it wouldn't matter.
And this is proving so in our fleets and in Pepsi's partner. In fact, the Pepsi actually said last week their drivers don't want to go back.
Yeah. As soon as we give anyone the electric semi, it's like that's like the choice.
It's what they want to drive.
Yeah. That's like so the most senior, like their top drivers, they get to drive the Tesla Semi. And it's the thing they want to drive. It's super fun to drive.
It's also very easy to drive.
It's easy to drive, and it holds ass. Yeah. It's like fast.
Yeah, super fast. Maybe too fast.
Well, but I mean, regular like you've seen like the videos of where like the Tesla electric Semi can go uphill. Speeding fast like the diesel truck,
or even cars.
Yeah, even cars. So it's responsive. It's you floor it and the truck actually moves.
But then that's a benefit not only for the driver and for the goods, but also for safety in terms of other drivers on the road. You don't get stuck behind the Semi. You're not in a slowdown situation in the on ramp. I mean, how that plays into, FSD, which is the second part of the question. All of the Semis have been, since the couple hundred we've deployed already, and the ones that we'll be building next year, and throughout hardware and the cameras necessary to deploy FSD. And we're currently training with that small fleet that we have. And as soon as the fleet is trained and the neural nets are up, we'll get FSD onto that platform.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a massive improvement in driver fatigue, because and driver safety. We've got sort of the anti-jackknifing software.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about your brakes overheating if you go down a steep hill, because we use regenerative, like that energy goes back into the pack.
Actually, when we leave Reno,
it's just like it's like radically better than a diesel Semi. It's what the drivers love it.
Yeah.
Great, guys. Thank you very much. Our next question is, when will Tesla incorporate X and Grok in all of the Tesla vehicles?
Well, I mean, these are relatively small fry things, but yeah, I think we'll keep expanding, what is available in the car on screen, and also improving like the browser. So like just generally you can access anything you want in the car. In fact, for the Tesla, once you get to full autonomy, you actually want fully a system that is can do anything. Like if you want to browse the internet, if you want to ask AI questions, if you want to watch a movie, if you want to play a video game, if you want to do some productivity thing, you can do anything you want in an autonomous vehicle because you don't need to drive. So that's why the Cybercab's got a nice big screen and a great sound system, so you can watch a great movie with. It's like being like in a
Personal movie theater.
Yeah, personal movie theater. Awesome.
Yeah, this is why we've been building this functionality, adding gaming to the car, adding movies and other, all sorts of different media applications to the car, because,
The cars are.
that's what you're gonna, the cars that we build today.
There's some
That's
really
what we
fun games, by the way. If you really haven't tried it, there's like Castle Doombad and Polytopia and a bunch of really fun games in the car.
We're constantly looking at, what features to add next, and we're paying attention to what's most commonly requested by our customers.
Yeah, play Castle Doombad. You won't regret it.
Great. Thank you guys very much. The next question is, Elon mentioned unsupervised FSD in California and Texas next year. Does that mean regulators have agreed to it in the entire state for existing hardware 3 and 4 vehicles?
No, as I said earlier, California loves regulation.
But they have a pathway.
Yeah, I mean, there's a pathway. Obviously, Waymo operates in California, so there's just a lot of forms to fill out and a lot of approvals that are required. I mean, I'd be shocked if we don't get approval next year, but it's just not something we totally control. But I think we will get approval next year in California and Texas, and towards the end of the year, it will branch out beyond California and Texas.
I mean, I think it's important to reiterate this, like homologating or certifying a vehicle at the federal level in the US is done by meeting FMVSS regulations. All our vehicles today that are produced that are autonomous capable meet all those regulations. The Cybercab will meet those regulations. And so the deployment of the vehicle to the road is not a limitation. What is a limitation is what you said at the state level, where they control autonomous vehicle deployment. Some states are relatively easy, as you mentioned, for Texas.
Yeah.
And so other ones have pathways like California that may take a little longer. Other ones haven't set up anything yet. And so we will work through those state by state and get it.
I do think we should have a federal.
I agree.
Like the autonomous vehicles should be approved. It should be possible to.
Congress, if you're listening, let's get a federal AB.
There should be a federal approval process for autonomous vehicles. I mean, that's how the FMVSS is
started and worked.
Federal motor vehicle, but the FMVSS is federal.
Yeah, so I mean, in 2017 and 18, it's when regulators started looking at it, and it's really kind of stalled since then. But we would appreciate and would support helping out with those regulations.
It really needs to be like a national approval is important. If there's a Department of Government Efficiency, I'll try to help make that happen. And do it for everyone, not just Tesla, obviously. But we like some things in the US are state by state regulated. Like for example, insurance, and it's incredibly painful to do it state by state, 50 states. And I think there should be a national approval process for autonomy. So.
Great. Thanks, guys. The next question is, what is the plan for 2025?
I mean, I think we're just talking.
I mean, basically, we talked through this. There's a lot going on. Elon already mentioned that we're working on cheaper models to come out. I mean, there's work which the team is doing to get the factories ready today to try and make that happen.
Yeah. By the way, the amount of work required to make a lower cost car is insanely high. But like, it is harder to get like 20% of the cost out of a car than it is to design the car and build the entire factory in the first place.
Yeah.
It's like excruciating, and there's not a lot of movies made about the heroes who got 20% of the cost out of a car. But let me tell you, there should be. Everyone got that is incredibly heroic.
It's little changes. It's not like a silver
Yeah,
bullet.
it's like there should be the heroes who got 20% cost out of a car. Is like, damn, I have a lot of respect for them. It's like movie. It's like, I think you probably could make a compelling movie, but it just no. Like, if you actually saw how hard if people actually saw how hard it was to do that, you'd be like, whoa, that's damn hard.
Just yesterday, we were talking about potting.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're like literally, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, when I do call it sort of like getting cost out of things, it's like Game of Pennies. It's like Game of Thrones, but pennies. First approximation, if you've got 10,000 items in a car, very rough approximation, and each of them costs $4, then you have a $40,000 car. So then if you want to make a $35,000 car, you've got to get 50 cents on average out of the 10,000 items.
Every part.
Yeah. And it's like, and then obviously the best is you delete some parts. In fact, we found to be able to delete a lot of parts. I'm very excited about the Cybercap design and the how we're rethinking the design of a car for the Cybercap, designing it for ultra high volume production, and then designing a machine that builds the machine that I think is also revolutionary. And it's just that there's no other car company that's even trying to do what we're doing. Like, I've even heard of it, actually. In fact, I'm certain there isn't one. I think our new machine that builds the machine, like it's inherent, like it's designed to be like, five times better than a traditional factory, like cycle time
and like part deletion, material movement. I don't think any other car company has the same level of like integration of thought that we have when it comes to like when you design a part from a white sheet of paper. Who's going to make it? Where is it going to be made? How's it going to be shipped? How's it going to be assembled into the vehicle? And like at any one point, if something is done in a silo, it becomes a bottleneck of either cost or time or efficiency. But with the robotaxi, the development, like we've done a good job on combining all that and then like blowing up how it's made and saying it should be made this way and rethinking it all so that it's the most efficient factory possible. That shows it will show in our CapEx efficiency when we deploy it. It shows in the number of parts, it shows in the simplicity of the vehicle, but also how it performs in terms of like end user state.
Yeah.
Just to close out, just on the energy front, also in 2025, we will have started manufacturing at the Megafactory Shanghai. We'll continue to increase our overall storage deployments with Powerwall 3. We plan to continue expanding our supercharging network, getting more OEMs on our network, 4680 and that cell ramp, as Elon talked about, that would keep going. And then we also will have our lithium refinery starting to produce. So there's a lot which is going on.
Great. Yeah, so many things.
Yeah.
I mean, the crazy thing is like Tesla's winning basically on almost every single thing we're doing. If we're not winning now, we're on track to win. In arenas where there are entire large companies, that's the only thing they do.
Yeah. I mean, it's a company. There are multiple companies within the company.
Yeah, Tesla's like many companies that one.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Just a few more. What is going on with the Tesla Roadster?
Fun things.
Well, I just like to thank our long-suffering deposit holders of the Tesla Roadster. The reason it hasn't come out yet is because the Roadster is not just the icing on the cake; it's the cherry on the icing on the cake. And so, our larger mission is to accelerate the progress towards a sustainable energy future. Try to do things that maximize the probability that the future is good for humanity and for Earth. And so that necessarily means that like the things like that are kind of like dessert. We'd all love to work on the Tesla, the next gen Tesla Roadster. It is super fun, and we are working on it. But it has to come behind the more things that have a more serious impact on the good of the world. So just thank you to all our long-suffering Tesla Roadster deposit holders. And we are actually finally making progress on that. And we're close to finalizing the design on that. It's really going to be something spectacular. You know, a friend of mine, Peter Thiel, you know, and sometimes people think that Peter Thiel and I are rivals. We're really good friends. But to be clear, you know, Peter, you know, was lamenting how, you know, the future doesn't have flying cars. Well, we'll see.
More to come.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. The next one is quite similar to other questions we've had, so I might combine it with the final question. So briefly, could you just detail how robotaxi will roll out? Will it start with a Tesla deployed fleet and then allow customers to add theirs on like a subscription model? And then will Hardware 3 be capable of level 5 FSD?
Regarding the Hardware 3, what we saw with 12.5 was it was easier to make rapid progress with starting with Hardware 4 and figuring out the solution and then backporting it to Hardware 3 instead of directly working on Hardware 3, given that Hardware 4 has more like fundamental hardware capabilities. I think that trend will continue into the next few quarters as well, where we first figure out the solution rapidly with AI4 and then backport it, write the kernels. It just takes longer to develop those things because it's not fundamentally supported in the hardware and it's emulated. But yeah, it's initially working on Hardware 4, backporting it to Hardware 3.
Yeah, so it's, I guess the answer is we're not 100% sure, but our as Ashok mentioned, because by some measures Hardware 4 has really several times the capability of Hardware 3. It's easier to get things to work with Hardware 4, and then it takes a lot of effort to sort of squeeze that functionality into Hardware 3. You know, there is some chance that Hardware 3 does not achieve the safety level that allows for unsupervised FSD. You know, there is some chance of that, and if that turns out to be the case, we will upgrade those who have bought Hardware 3 FSD for free. And we have designed the system to be upgradable. You know, so, and it's really more, you know, just to switch out the computer type of thing. Like the cameras are okay. You know, they're capable, but anyway, we don't actually know the answer to that. But if it does turn out, we'll make sure we take care of those who have bought FSD on Hardware 3.
Great. In the last few minutes that we have left, we will try to get in some analyst questions. The first question will be coming from Pierre Farragut at New Street. Pierre, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Thanks a lot, guys, for taking my question. I was wondering about like the compute you're ramping up. So you gave like interesting statistics on how much you have, and you said you don't feel your compute constrained. And I was wondering, you know, how you are putting to work this additional compute. Is that a game for you of creating like larger and larger models, like next generation of models that are larger, the way OpenAI go from GPT-3 to GPT-4? Or is that more like you're set on your model and you need to throw more and more compute to accelerate the pace of learning to improve reliability? And then I had a quick follow-up, real quick, on your rollout in Texas and in California next year. The plan, as you see it today, is it to roll out like a fleet or two with cars that will start with like a supervisory, like some onboard supervision, someone sitting at the wheel just in case, and removing the supervisors progressively? Or are you aiming for going fully fledged without even a human supervisor when you get started?
Okay, well, I guess we're going to. I'll answer the first part of the question. The nature of real world AI is different from, say, an LLM, in that you have a massive amount of context. So that like you've got case of Tesla 7 or 8 cameras that you know, 9 up to 9 if you include the internal camera, that so you've got gigabytes of context, and that is then distilled down into a small number of control outputs. Whereas it's like you don't really, it's very rare to have. In fact, I'm not sure any LLM out there can do gigabytes of context. And then you've got to then process that in the car with a very small amount of compute power. It's all doable and it's happening, but it is a different problem than what, say, a Gemini or an OpenAI is doing. Now, part of the way you can make up for the fact that the inference computer is quite small is by spending a lot of effort on training. And just like a human, the more you train on something, the less mental workload it takes when you try when you do it. Like when the first time like a human starts driving, it absorbs your whole mind. But then as you train more and more on driving, get very good, then the driving becomes a background task. It only absorbs a small amount of your mental capacity because you have a lot of training. So we can make up for the fact that the inference computer is it's tiny compared to a 10 kilowatt bank of GPUs, because you've got a few hundred watts of inference compute. We can make up that with heavy training. So yeah, that's and then there's also vast amounts of the actual petabytes of data coming in are tremendous, and then sorting out what training is important was of the vast amounts of video training or video data coming in from the fleet, what is actually most important for training? That's also quite difficult. But as I said, we're not currently training compute constrained. I'm sure if you want to elaborate on it.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the training helps both train larger models, also to train quicker. But in the end, we still got to pick which models are performing better. So the validation effort to picking the models, because the miles per intervention is pretty large, we have to drive a lot of miles to go in closed loop. We do have simulation and other ways to get those metrics. Those do help, but in the end, that's a big bottleneck. Yeah, that's why we're not training compute constraint alone. And there's other axis of scaling as well, which is the data, figuring out which data is more useful. That is an important task, and we're focusing on that.
Yeah.
So as it relates to the second part of your question, Pierre, about safety drivers and rolling it out, each state has different requirements that, in terms of how many miles and how much time you need to have a safety driver and not have a safety driver. We're going to follow all those. We're not going to violate whatever regulations are out there, with safety as a priority. But the goal is obviously that when we're ready and safety is there, we'll remove all the drivers from the rideshare program.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like we think that we'll be able to have driverless Teslas doing paid rides next year, sometime next year.
All right, thank you. And our next question comes from Adam Jonas at Morgan Stanley. Adam, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Okay, thanks everybody. Just had a question about the relationship between Tesla and xAI. Many investors are still not clear how the work at xAI is truly beneficial to Tesla. Some even take the view that the two companies may even be in competition with each other in terms of talent and tech, and even your time, Elon. So what's your message to investors on that relationship between Tesla and xAI, and where do you see it going over time? Thanks.
Well, I should say that xAI has been helpful to Tesla AI quite a few times in terms of things like scaling up a lot of like training. Just even like recently in the last week or so, improvements in fault-tolerant training, where if you're doing a big training run and a node fails, being able to continue training and and easy to recover from on a training run. XAI has been pretty helpful. But there are different problems. XAI is working on artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence. Tesla is trying to make autonomous cars and autonomous robots. They're different problems. So, yeah, I mean,
I think we've said this before also, like not all AI is equal, right? I mean, AI is a broad spectrum.
Yeah.
And we have our own swim lanes. Yes, there are certain things which we can collaborate on if needed, but for the most part, we're solving different issues.
Yeah, Tesla's focused on real world AI. And like I was saying earlier, it is quite a bit different from an LLM. Because you have massive context in the form of video and some amount of audio that's got to be distilled very with extremely efficient inference compute. I do think Tesla is the most efficient in the world in terms of inference compute, because out of necessity, we have to be very good at efficient inference. We can't put 10 kilowatts of GPUs in a car. We've got a couple hundred watts, and it's a pretty well designed Tesla AI chip, but it's still a couple hundred watts. But there are different problems. I mean, it's just like the stuff that XAI does, like when it's running inference. I mean, it is running inference, like it's answering questions, it's answering testing questions on a 10 kilowatt rack. It's like, can't put that in a car. It's a different problem.
Please no.
No, exactly. So, XAI is because I felt there wasn't a truth-seeking digital superintelligence company out there. Like that's what it came down to. That there needed to be a truth-seeking, like an AI company that is just very rigorous about being truthful. And so I'm not saying XAI is perfect, but that is that is at least the explicit aspiration. Even if something is, politically incorrect, it should still be truthful. I think this is very important for AI safety. So anyway, I think XAI it has been helpful to Tesla and will continue to be helpful to Tesla, but there are very different problems. Great. And I mean, like, if you also think like what other car company has a world-class chip design team? Like zero. What other car company has a world-class AI team like Tesla does? Zero. Those were all startups that were created from scratch.
Great. Thank you, Elon. And I think that's unfortunately all the time that we have for today. We appreciate all of your questions and we look forward to hearing you next quarter. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Well.
Holy crap. That was I pulled about 29 nuggets out of that are all very profound and wow. What did you guys think?
That was one of the more exciting earning calls ever.
Yeah, second best in my opinion. Because what was the one? It was a Q1, it was a complete shit show, and then Q2 was a big improvement. Is that how it worked, or was it Q4?
No, Q1 was good. Q1 was the bad delivery numbers, but we still went up.
Yeah,
but that was a record book call. So much in there, so much.
Yeah. So I captured 28 nuggets, not 29, but just to look at them. First of all, the talk about robot, nobody got hurt. A lot of talk about the 25K car, a lot of confusion. Sub 30K with incentives. The robotaxi will be 25K. So a lot of people probably got tripped up on that. Did you guys?
Well, so the term robotaxi is going to be sticky now. This is a technical term inside of Tesla that applies to all cars. So anytime any investor or person outside the company says the robotaxi, they're going to get met with weird answers because all the cars are the robotaxi. Cybercab is kind of its own thing. Robovan is kind of its own thing. So I think people are asking about Cybercab, but they use the word robotaxi, and so they get a weird answer
Correct.
back out on that end.
Yeah, the other cool nugget was the battery discussion, how they will be the most competitive battery company on Earth. I thought that was interesting with the 4680, and they're coming out with new versions of batteries, the 4 new models, which you didn't get into, but that's big, I think.
He did say North America though, not Earth, and I think it was
Okay.
one of the key components that he was talking about with their competitiveness was the IRA credits that they're getting. So it's still very good news for sure, but it's not like, you know, a core manufacturing reason why this is going to be the most efficient battery on Earth.
So yeah, Matt, on that one, when he said net of incentives fully landed, are you saying that the 4680s are equal to, you know, what they're buying from other competitors, but only if you count in the incentives that they're getting from the government?
I don't know how else you can read it, and I believe it's a $49 per kilowatt hour incentive that they're essentially getting. So it's like that's a really big piece of the overall landed cost when you're talking about battery cells. So I think if you were to, and he's saying that even today they're not at that lowest cost yet, but they're like close. And then importantly, he did say with a lot more room to go after that. So yeah, I do think they're getting a lot of credit for those incentives, which we know offset their cost of goods sold, which is, you know, kind of prudent. But in the future where those credits go away, that's going to be kind of hard to make up.
Yeah, and that's with primarily imported cathodes still at this point in time. They have not fully transitioned over to their in-house dry electrode manufacturing process for their in-house cathodes.
Guys, real quick, I want to continue going through James' list, but I know Emmett also has to jump in a second here. Emmett, can you just like give quickly what your thoughts are overall, high level?
Yeah, I mean, high level, I was excited that he went on for a long time in the beginning. Like he seems really pumped and gave a lot of extra detail as like the, you know, the preamble or whatever, what have you, like the, you know, introduction to the earnings call more so than I can remember. I think the 4680 news is definitely positive, but that in North America, he referenced a couple times, as Matt was saying. I think that's probably inclusive of the IRA credits. And then they, what was kind of surprising to me also was that, you know, he said after the We Robot event, they've noticed a significant uptake in full self-driving take rate. So that extra exposure they maybe demonstrations that they showed helped with the awareness and get people to start signing up, more people to start signing up for the full self-driving. So maybe they're ready to release some metrics about people signing up for full self-driving soon. We'll see. But overall, it was a great call. I mean, a lot of times I can think like, do I think it was a great call because the stock kept going up during the call, or do I think it was genuinely a great call because of the content? And I can't tell the difference on this one, to be honest. You know, like sometimes there's earning calls where I feel like, oh, it was a bad earnings call, or just because the stock went down during the earnings call, you know, the sentiment or whatever. But this one, I'm happy to, obviously, and the content was great. But you know, was it like a record of nuggets dropped in this content of this call? I'm not so sure, but overall, I'm very happy with it.
Emmett, just again before you drop off, you know, I guess to push back a little bit on the Nuggets. I mean, the fact that they are already doing unsupervised so drives in the Bay Area with employees or whatnot. I mean, what'd you take from that? Because that was something that I think some of us had expected or predicted was happening behind the scenes, but the confirmation is pretty big.
Well, didn't they say they have the employee sitting in the car, but or did I misunderstand that? Is it like the car driving by itself with the employee in the back seat or something?
It's picking up employees as a cyber cab. They have the app working. They have the locations. They locked up the cybersecurity. It's live. When I heard that, I was like, holy crap, I was not aware of that. So that's big.
To your point, though,
So
Emmett,
the
there is
employees are
a
in the
safety
back seat.
driver. Yeah, there's a safety driver in the front seat right
That's what I
now
would think,
because
yeah.
that is and Lars made that point. It's mandatory per California state regulations, and they have not demonstrated enough data yet to be able to remove that driver. But yeah, it's operating.
Yeah, I mean, every day as it is anyway. I'm just the safety driver, but I'm letting the car drive me. But like when they actually have no one sitting in the front seat, like no safety driver, and it's in some test phase, that would be a nice step forward. I'm looking for.
Yeah, I guess to me it was just more bullish because that is the pre-step before you go to no one behind the driver's seat. And so I think everybody up to this point had been anticipating we'd have to do that, and then we can get to the no one behind the seat. But it seems that that whole timeline's shifting left because they're already testing that out. They're already doing that, which I
Yep.
think is a big signal. So that's how
Yep.
I took it.
Robotaxi is live, and nobody knew about that. So it's big, even with the safety driver, when you consider a lot of the Waymos are teleoperated as well. Anyway,
Yeah.
big.
Any other thoughts on it before you drop?
No, I mean, I think overall I'm very happy. I was confused about, how they commented on the first two questions. It didn't seem to jive with what I was interpreting as the Outlook product section we went over pre-call. So I couldn't quite make sense of it. Maybe I just wasn't focusing enough. I'll listen to that part again later. So I couldn't tell if they're still building a lower cost vehicle that's cab that people can buy or not. I couldn't, or they're just using the current Model 3, Model Y infrastructure, trying to get costs lower with better incentives. Maybe the incentive is going to be like, buy this Model 3 hardware 4 for $15,000 as long as you let us put it in our robotaxi network, when you're not using it, for example. I don't know. So it could be something like that. I'm wondering if there's some kind of creative way to lower the cost of the current cars. But that
Yeah.
was my final thought.
For me, I thought it was kind of clear. I mean, you guys all let me know if I'm wrong, but it seemed pretty clear that essentially what we knew before today's, what the product roadmap was, where there would be this extra vehicle that's lower cost, built kind of as a hybrid between the Unbox and what's going on with the 3 and Y line is still in play to come out in 2025. That was my understanding.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well. And I think that the comment that I made earlier, Emmett, about confusion around the term robotaxi, I think that that was the question where that came up. The question specifically called out the robotaxi with steering wheel and pedals. And that's when, because they used the term robotaxi instead of cybercab, that they got a confusing answer.
Correct. Every Tesla is a robotaxi. Cybercab has no pedals or steering wheel.
Yep. There's also a weird observation because I've watched all these earnings calls and I always watch the chart at the same time, which is up now. Normally, something is said on these earning calls that drives the stock price down in real time. That did not happen today, which is very unusual. Did anybody else pick up on that?
I did, and I was actually watching because I thought the moment where he was talking about how it would be hard to maintain the gross margins in Q4. I thought that was a moment where the stock would drop, but it really didn't. That was the only kind of surprise for me. But yeah, I mean, normally Elon starts talking about whatever he's going to talk about, like a Kardashev Type 3 organization or like a planet, and all of a sudden the stock drops $4, but we didn't get any of that this time.
Yeah, I was watching for it to drop when he said, we don't know about hardware 3. I was expecting for it to drop. And then as he said that we would retrofit or whatever for free, I was going to wait for it to pop up. But it didn't even move. It didn't even register.
Well, they caught it because they said it's easier to train on hardware 4, deploy on hardware 4, and then backwards deploy to hardware 3, which made sense. But tied to that was super interesting. Critical interventions, 100x improvement in 12.5 versus the previous version at the beginning of the year. And then version 13 will be 1,000x better since over January 2024. And they believe it'll beat the average human in Q2 2025. I think I have more confidence in my Cybertruck FSD in the streets of Los Angeles during rush hour traffic than I do in my own driving. So I think we're already there.
Yeah,
I agree.
Maybe again, Emmett, but before you drop off, because Cybertruck has a different version of FSD than what I have. I think you're on 5.5, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Are you still having a great experience? I know during the We Robot call, we were talking about it. Matt and Bradford did that test, and they had a critical intervention. I remember that. But you were saying that on the Cybertruck, you're just having such a great experience. Is that still the trend that you're seeing with Cybertruck?
I have a great experience. Once in a blue moon, like instances here and there where it is in the wrong lane. I have to take over to put it in the right lane. That's for the turn only lane when I have to make a left or something, or like and these are in like somewhat confusing lane situations where, if I was new to the area, I might also be confused. So it's not, it's a hard problem to solve maybe for completely, but it's not a hard stop problem. Like worst case, if it was in the wrong lane, then it just goes the wrong way and has to go around the block and then go the right way or something. If it was like a robo taxi thing, but for me in the car, I'm going to take over and put it in the right lane. But that's the only issues I've had with the Cybertruck full self driving that I can think of off the top of my head. Nothing critical comes.
And James, you're seeing the same thing with Cybertruck 12.
Yeah, so I tried to figure out, that happened to be once or twice over 2,500 miles with pure FSD driving, and I think I may have realized why is because it anticipates a risk and it would rather miss the turn than put the car in danger. So if somebody's coming up fast from behind and about to cut you off or trying to get into the lane, it doesn't want to risk that. So it doesn't mind going around the block or taking the next exit or whatever. It's happened to me twice in 2,500 miles. Exactly that scenario. And when I look back and tried to figure out exactly why it did, I think it sensed danger that I wasn't exactly aware of.
Gotcha.
Perhaps.
Yeah, because I'm on 12.54.1, and like today, for example, there's like this weird train track with like a forklift going by on it near like this place where you pick up gravel and stuff. And I'm watching FSD go, and it's just not even stopping at all. So I had to take over. I'm like, man, that's the first intervention I've had in I don't know how long. But like that's that's pretty basic stuff for FSD. Like FSD never makes that mistake, but to me that was safety critical, unfortunately. But it's good to hear what you guys are seeing with 5.5, which obviously I'm not on the latest build.
There was one other incident that came to mind that was a few days ago that I noted actually, where it was like turning into some like parking lot, like in a really super sunny glare spot. Like I couldn't even see. I had to like put my hand, it's one of those spots where even if you're driving, it's really hard to see with the sun blaring. It was just like soon after the sun rose or something, like it's like right in your face. So maybe it's messing up the view of one of the cameras or a couple of the cameras. I don't know. And it kind of like hesitated and sort of stopped mid-turn, like not sure if it was parking lot, but there was like oncoming traffic that would have stopped, I would imagine, but I just took over and just pushed it ahead to get in the parking lot instead of making the traffic that's coming the other way stop and wait for my Cybertruck to like figure out should it go in or not. So just like uncomfortable for sure, but it's not, I don't think it would be like a super, it was in a situation where it wasn't like a highway oncoming. It was just like a road with cars coming the other way, and they would have stopped and been like annoyed, like, why are you stopping there?
There was another very profound point, if you've got a moment to insert it. It was regarding the 22 degrees of freedom, Optimus, extremely human-like, the most advanced robot by a long shot. We have all the ingredients to scale. The competition is missing the AI brain and the ability to scale to high volume production. He said that with such confidence. I thought that was quite profound. Thoughts?
I mean, 100% agree.
I'll say real quick. I 100% agree, and I think the Optimus robot is not priced into the valuation of the stock at all by institutions. Nope. Exciting opportunity. Anyway, Hans, go on.
Yeah, that essentially my point exactly. There's no one else who has all of the components, and then I think people who are super excited about Figure, which I think is an interesting company. The thing that you've got to wrestle with is where's their Cortex. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't see the likelihood that the exact same types of training that OpenAI does, which is essentially what they're kind of right now banking on for Figure, are going to port super well to the humanoid form factor for all the different things that they want to solve. Whereas Tesla has the experience of setting up the entire data flywheel and the training process, using video data to solve real world autonomy for the car. And while, that's just the beginning of solving autonomy for the Optimus robot, that video training schema is definitely, I think, an incredibly huge and important piece for solving the Optimus humanoid robot problem. and there just isn't anyone who has the experience, the data, or the training setup to even begin to tackle that problem.
I mean, it's the most important part by a country mile. I mean, you could imagine a scenario where, let's say, Tesla outsourced manufacturing and design of the bot to a company like Figure, but like Tesla had Cortex and could, train at scale. Like, where would most of the margins in a scenario like that accrue to? Like a company like Figure that, let's just say that they actually did have the manufacturing expertise to scale up, which they don't. Let's just like hypothetically, or like the company that can actually use this or develop the software to make the work that it's doing actually useful. It seems very clear to me that the hardware is going to be kind of roughly commoditized in the long run, because it'll all be like relatively performant. I think Tesla has some stuff that's actually important about like long-term manufacturability and things like that are, very, very important. I don't want to minimize the importance of them, but really having the brain is by far the more important thing if you're trying to rapidly train for like thousands or hundreds of thousands or eventually millions of different like job types that are out there. Having that data flywheel and that training flywheel is like absolutely critical. And I think everyone I'm hearing talk about bots, like unless they're talking about Tesla, they're not talking about that component of it, which is, I think, exactly to your point, Hans, the most important by far.
So let's see. I also had a number of nuggets. What else did you have, James?
I'm not even quarter way to the list. We should talk about the Lathrop capacity and Shanghai, and then the target of 100 gigawatt hours, I think it was.
Yep.
You guys catch all those numbers? They're pretty impressive. I was pinging Matt in the comments here during it. My $1 trillion valuation now looks stupid based on those numbers. So.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about 100 gigawatt hours in 2025, and eventually terawatt hours worth of scale on the Megapack. So, yeah, what are the implications there, Matt?
Yeah, so I was just going through because I didn't see your comments come through, so I'm actually kind of looking back up at those now. But yeah, I mean, this is something that they've been talking about for a long time. I mean, like terawatt hour scale. This is what they were talking about at Battery Day, and I think, given the fact that energy has like ho-hummed along for so long, we kind of lose track of the fact that was the original ambition, and the actual demand seems to be strengthening, if anything, to make those numbers look even more realistic. So, I mean, we're finally at the point now where the Lathrop ramping is starting to make itself felt in the financial deployments. Going from which is a 40 gigawatt hour factory. So getting Shanghai up to 40 gigawatt hours, I mean, that has pretty wild implications. I mean, because if you're just getting to 10 gigawatt hours per quarter at these margins, that's roughly $1 billion of gross margin contribution per quarter. So if you've got two plants doing that same thing, then you're talking about, $2 per quarter, or $2 billion per quarter. And then you're like at a oh gosh, what's the math on that? It's like $1.50-ish in earnings per share contribution, which should be up and running like by mid to late next year, let's say, kind of contributing those types of numbers. And then meanwhile, continuing to grow and ramp beyond that. And then if you think about how realistic is it to get to a terawatt hour, I think it's actually extremely realistic. I think you do need to assume that ASPs come down in order to kind of facilitate that level of growth, because these battery projects are not like absolute money printers across the board. I was actually just doing some modeling for an energy project very recently, and it's like we need more battery storage, but it's not like it's just an absolute money printer overnight. So I think the prices do need to come down, but still, I mean, talking about $2-ish of earnings per share contribution in the next couple of years is absolutely massive. When I think expectations for Tesla this year were something like $3.50 total. So, I mean, if you can do more than half that on the energy side alone, that's a really big deal. And I do think that the sky is pretty much the limit on that side of the business. I mean, it's entirely feasible to have, $10 in earnings per share in the not too distant future.
And do you have a view on the, if we're bringing 60 gigawatt hours worth of capacity online in 2025, Do you think that part of that's in Fremont, part of that's in China? Is that all Shanghai? Is that Shanghai plus a third location? Yeah, what's your view on that?
Well, so we know Shanghai's going to be 40, right? But I think we all kind of think that they're sandbagging that a little bit.
The initial capacity of the vehicles was only 400,000 too, and they were well in excess of that with the actual production before they finally updated. They're like, oh yeah, by the way, it's going to be like 900,000 or whatever it was.
Yeah. So, Lathrop, maybe I think 40 is probably reasonable. I've been there. It's actually a pretty small site. So I don't think they, could get to like 50 or something more substantial than that without just in that facility footprint, because it is so small. But I think a lot of people forget that they were actually talking about building 4680 lines at Giga Nevada and actually making megapacks there. This is something Elon said. He kind of like dropped it nonchalantly at his talk there, maybe it was 2 years ago or so, that they're going to be making 4680s for stationary storage at Giga Nevada and using those for megapacks. So, wouldn't surprise me if we get, I think that was with the 100 gigawatt hour total expansion, but most of that going to auto at Giga Nevada. So maybe you get, 20 gigawatt hours or so going to stationary storage out of that kind of cell supply. So that, to me, that seems like a reasonable outcome. So maybe you've got, 40 in Lathrop, 10 or 20 in Giga Nevada, and then 50, 60, maybe even 80 in Shanghai. And, by 2026 or so, kind of getting to those levels. To me, that seems like a very reasonable kind of outcome. And they've already announced all those things.
Yeah, and especially with the, kind of demand pocket for batteries in the, given the lack of growth in EVs that we're seeing, like there's kind of a glut of availability of batteries. So it seems like scaling storage rapidly while prices for batteries are this low makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we know the energy side of the business is definitely benefiting from, all the business is benefiting from the cell supply glut that we've seen. And it seems like that's leveling out a little bit from what I'm hearing, kind of listening to the lithium earnings calls and that sort of thing. But I think the overall trend is still for kind of continued manufacturing improvements and ways to get the cost down, especially on the 4680 side. But I think the trend we'll see is that the delivered cost of megapacks continues to come down a little bit. I mean, they already made massive strides. They were going from like $450 per kilowatt hour down to around $260, I think they are right now. Absolutely massive improvement in just like a couple of years. And so that's done, I think, a lot for increasing demand.
And then also wanted to call out from earlier in the call, he said at least 2 million units per year of Cybercab. They're going to start ramping production of Cybercab to volume in 2026, not just beginning production in 2026. And they said ultimately potentially as much as 4 million units per year on the Cybercab. That's the first that I think we've heard actual numbers around that specific product.
So it is, but I think I was also wondering how does that compare to their battery day where they were talking about 20 million vehicles by 2030? Because I thought at that point when they were talking about like a robotaxi vehicle, I thought they were talking about, I don't know, 6 to 8 million units per year or something like that. I think the 20 million number has been scaled way back in everyone's mind. So maybe that's just a kind of pro rata reduction in kind of aspirations. But I think if they do achieve the numbers that they're talking about, to me, it would make sense that you'd go for more than 2 million. But I don't know. Maybe you don't try to promise too much right now. Maybe Elon's finally under promising, because I do think there'd be way more demand than just 2 million per year.
Well, I think the smaller model with steering wheel and pedals will definitely also be a high volume product that will well exceed and that was another thing that he mentioned there before. The Cybercab was only 20 to 30% vehicle delivery growth in 2025. So I guess what that puts us somewhere around 2.5 million produced roughly target in 2025. but that's probably exiting the year with a run rate of somewhere around that 3 million units on an annualized basis.
Yeah, he did say a couple of things regarding Cybercab production up to 2 million units per year in 2026. This talks about like a very fast ramp. That was kind of interesting to me. He also said with the potential to reach 4 million units globally across multiple factories. Did you guys prize that apart?
Yeah, well, and we'll have to see if we've heard Elon talk in the past about a Shanghai designed version and a Berlin designed version for the different regions. So is that factored into that vehicle, or are those vehicles different? That'll be an interesting thing to hear. But yeah, I noticed that. And the other thing that I heard him say was, roughly a half order of magnitude better cycle time for these vehicles than a traditional auto factory. So a traditional auto factory would be, somewhere around 60-second cycle time. I think that's pretty standard-ish. So if you divide that by 5, you get to 12 seconds. I think that Shanghai is currently somewhere in the range of just under 30 seconds to crank out a vehicle on an existing line. So that's still like 2.5 times better than Shanghai, which is already incredible. And that has huge implications for the size, the amount of capex that goes into building out a factory, and their ability to reach those higher scale delivery numbers off of relatively small lines.
The other thing was super interesting to me was the FSD adoption rate. We touched on it briefly, but the halo effect of 1010 was a huge catalyst for that adoption, which I did not expect.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the most surprising comments in the whole call, actually. Because before the call, we were trying to kind of piece together the different bits. One of the things that I noted was they actually disclosed the deferred FSD revenue that was recognized on the call. I think it was around 350 million or so, which was a bit higher than I've been projecting. I think I was around 200 million of recognition of deferred. But then when you kind of count in the FSD on new sales plus the FSD subscriptions for the subscribers, that according to my estimates is like another 250 million ish or so. So they might be in the kind of $500 million, like $500 million of pure margin kind of FSD revenue right now. And if their take rate's actually increasing, and like, it's always seemed very logical to me that as the software improves, all else being equal, take rate should improve, right?
Yeah, if you maintain cost, being the same, and we've actually done the opposite. We've actually been decreasing the cost and improving the functionality. So something's got to give it at some point.
Yeah, so like it seems like it's never been quite material enough where they've started disclosing it. But I think if you're getting again to like this $500 million per quarter kind of rate, that starts to become really material. And it's the sort of thing that I think a lot of analysts aren't actually modeling this out separately. And I think it's extremely important to do so. And I've been kind of pounding the table on this for years, because let's just say that the next like version 13 is amazing and a bunch of people get the new trial, and you go from 1% of the fleet subscribing to 3% of the fleet subscribing. Like that's an absolutely massive kind of change overnight. And so I think of like the fleet as this like potential energy of all this earnings potential that could come there. And I think it will flip at some point. But I suspect we're kind of getting there, because if we're seeing results this good for Q3 and then the 1010 event, which was after these results went live, we're seeing like a pretty noticeable inflection point then that kind of implies Q4 numbers are going to be even better. Although offset a little bit by the fact that you're not going to have as much Cybertruck deferred FSD revenue recognition.
And I did enjoy hearing that they're going to continue providing those free 1-month trials at points along the journey as they improve the functionality. So people who tried it before and they're like, I like it, it's good, but it's not quite there yet. You start to win over more and more of those people. And that's, one of the great things about FSD, which it does surprise me that the 1010 event actually made a significant difference because, Tesla has the ability to essentially sell the software package to every driver in every car via the screen. Like the distribution mechanism is built in, and yeah, this is something that is going to be extremely material over time. And if they have the ability to operate a Waymo-like fleet with a driver in the seat, but who's just a safety driver, it should be to the point where it's extremely useful to people at least some level. I mean, whether it's $50 a month subscriptions or 75 or 100, as the functionality continues to improve, you get to the point where lots more people think, yeah, that's actually totally worth it.
And I know we've already said this, but I think it just like really bears like stopping. If this is actually safer than humans in Q2 of next year, what does that earnings call look like? I mean, what does the take rate for FSD look like in Q3? I mean, I do think that we're at this point where this like we're looking backwards at this linear progression of FSD as we've lived it, and it's been like very slow. Like they're seeing now with the data, like clearer than ever, a very tangible line of sight to be safer than humans in the next 6 months, and that's absolutely wild. And I think investors should like really consider that. I don't want to give them full credit for that today, but I mean, I think James, the kind of price targets that you were talking about are very realistic if we see this progression that they're talking about.
Yeah, and it's not just that, it's just the competition is recoiling. There is no competition. We're seeing S curves explode, Iceland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, China. The rest of the world is just playing catch up. And again, goes back to our first conversation, dumb car versus smart car. What are people going to buy? It'll become a no-brainer. And just wait till Texas launches robotaxis. People will start stacking Teslas. Secondhand Teslas will not be available in the market, is my forecast. Everybody's just going to snap them up. You're going to see a $30,000 2-year-old Tesla with 25,000 miles. Stackers will buy them and hoard them. And that's the future. It's going to be very interesting next year. 2025 is going to be wild. 2026, launching Optimus hopefully onto the market, wilder. And then what happens when Wall Street wakes up? They're going to have to get some new spreadsheets and some new pencils.
Yeah, it definitely feels to me like the period that NVIDIA was experiencing, back in 2022, where Jensen was out there pounding the table on what the future was going to look like, what demand was going to look like. People didn't believe him. A few things went the wrong way and their value took a nosedive for a period of time, but they were just laying the groundwork quarter after quarter for massive profitability. And I feel like that's where we are today. I don't know if we'll see that in the next 2-3 quarters, but I think that if you can zoom out and look at a 12 to 24 month time frame, the likelihood that the software contribution to Tesla's overall profitability takes a massive tick upwards is super high in my view, and even higher now than I think at the beginning of this call. Like the number of things that we had confirmed that really point in that direction are just basically undeniable.
Yeah, bonkers. Well, let me see. Do I have any other mini nuggets we may have missed? Oh yeah, the Tesla Semi. Basically, they said the demand is off the hook. Any driver demands, they want it bad, the vehicle. It's a pleasure to drive. It's safe. It's comfortable. And it's much easier to drive too. So they said the Semi is a commodity of total cost of ownership with ridiculous demand, which has been proven by the DHL and Pepsi use case. So the question is, how fast can they scale that? I think I was a little bit disappointed that they won't start really ramping the Sparks of area location until second half of next year. Do you guys see that too?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. But that
yeah,
was
they
it.
said pilot builds in the second half of 2025, and then actually working on scale production in 2026.
Yeah. But the fact that Europe wants to get their hands on it too, again, just like Megapacks, unlimited demand. That's super interesting. I think that's it from my side. Crazy cool.
Poor
Crazy.
Roadster people, though, still being left out to dry.
The cherry on top of the icing on top of the cake, which is dead right. The focus is sustainability. So I hope people understood that.
Yep.
Before.
Yeah, but definitely no solid timelines. They said, "Oh, we're almost done finalizing the design." It's like, okay, we have no concrete timelines, but that is okay.
You know, I think the thing about the Roadster is it exists to make the semi program look fast.
This is true.
Yeah. And the Peter Thiel comment regarding the flying car, they keep hinting at that.
Well, he already has one. That's there's already a Roadster flying in space. So
true.
I guess orbiting technically, but yeah. You know, that first call too, where he was, or the first question where he was just talking about the fact that like all these are going to be robo taxis, and that's really the focus. I think that really is the fundamental takeaway and the thing that everyone should be focusing on. Yes, like semi matters, energy ramp is super exciting, but I mean, like the real meat and potatoes is what's going on with autonomy, and it's.
Yep.
I really love the way that he framed it by comparing to like the data rate that Waymo has and that kind of feedback loop. It's something that we all know, being the nerds that we are, but I feel like you need to keep like pounding the table on that for Wall Street to get it. But I suspect they won't until we start actually getting to the point where like there's a consensus of everyone that like I just don't intervene anymore. and I don't think we're there. I don't think we're really even close to there yet, at least from a how many orders of magnitude do we need to get to? Maybe Emmett is in his hardware 4 Cybertruck in his particular location. But I mean, yeah, we're still seeing issues all the time on both hardware 4 and 3 vehicles right now.
I did, just want to come back to that point actually about their, Ashok's comments on developing, the bleeding edge of development for FSD is going to move to hardware 4 or AI 4, and that makes a ton of sense, but that they can then backport that software to hardware 3. And I think for the foreseeable future, that backporting is totally feasible and it's going to happen. I think the further and further down the line we get, the longer it will take to do the work to make the stuff backwards compatible to hardware 3. But this is 100% in line with the expectations that I've had for what this would look like. And then, you can, if you think about how much CapEx is involved in doing that free upgrade to an FSD, like a hybrid, an AI 3 board with a AI 4 chip on it in millions of vehicles, like that's really expensive. It totally makes sense. It's absolutely feasible to do, but think about how much money you can spend optimizing the software to just make the software work on hardware 3 before you're willing to spool up an entire chip line to make these millions of chips and actually install these weird retrofit computers, because the AI 4 computers are not directly compatible. Like that's not an easy swap that you can do. And so they're going to have to, if they have to upgrade those computers, that's a custom upgrade that they're going to have to design and produce at scale and then, do these installs on. And so that's, a pretty significant amount of cost. And so that makes it like, if that's what you're looking at having to do, well, yeah, it makes sense to spend quite a bit of engineering effort to actually just make the software work on the existing hardware 3 platform, if that's possible. And Elon's right, it may not be possible, we don't know. I think my reading of the tea leaves is that that's more like it's probably a 60 to 70% chance that hardware 3 will still be able to achieve better than human safety rating. and that those hardware upgrades won't actually be necessary. But if it is, then Tesla will solve it. They'll build those chips, they'll put them in the cars, because when you're looking at that car could earn hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of its lifetime, its useful lifetime, and it's going to cost you on average maybe $3,000 to put that new computer in the car. Well, of course you're going to do that. So this is the most obvious outcome, I think, that could possibly have been revealed. It's just nice to hear it officially said by Elon and Ashok and Tesla, because there's so much FUD around this that people invent a lot of very unlikely hypothetical scenarios that they think is going to happen that were totally not going to happen.
Yeah, I did think that was a great answer. But both as a customer and as an investor, like, we think it'll work. We're gonna try to squeeze as much juice out of hardware 3 if possible. But frankly, just we can't know the answer to that. So I love the honesty. But if not, then here's what we'll do. And I do think they wouldn't need to retrofit for everyone. I think they would only need to retrofit for those who purchased FSD.
Or wanted to contribute their hardware 3 vehicle to the robotaxi network,
right?
Which will probably be a lot.
Yeah, so it probably would be, but I think Tesla probably wouldn't be on the hook to do that unless you actually opt to buy FSD. So then if you, let's say you're
true.
one of you're like a 2021 Model Y or something like that didn't buy FSD, and all of a sudden you say, oh shoot, this makes sense to me. I'll buy FSD now for $8,000. Maybe in the future it's a little bit more than that. Well, I'm sure that $8,000 would more than cover Tesla's cost for the install. So it would still make economic sense for them at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. So, all right.
Any other nuggets? Did we miss anything else?
No, actually, I just finished writing a Substack. It's going to go out right now that has everything summarized. So while I'm talking, I'm multitasking.
That's magic.
You guys. Yeah.
Yep.
So it was a great show. I want to thank you both. Thank you, Hans. Great meeting you as well, Matt. Really appreciate all the insight, and Emmett as well, and Nico. I think it was a very good match, and let's keep the good juju going, and hope everybody like we've had 22 months to stack this puppy, and I still pinch myself every day. My dream would be for it to stay at $200 for the next year and then rotate crypto into it, but that may not happen. Looks like the barn has left the stable, or the horse has left the stable. And I'm tired.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you all. Appreciate you guys, and I hope to see you soon. Okay.
Yeah. Have a great evening.
Cheers. Let me see. Do you press the stop button?